out of Akron, Ohio, representing Team Popping the Boys, the headline god, Jeremy Lambert, and his co-host, speaking out of Atlanta, Georgia, representing more than one royal family, the king of indie viewing, Stephen Jensen. And this is the Spotlight on Fightful.
Welcome everyone to the Spotlight here on Fightful. I'm Jeremy Lambert. That is Stephen Jensen, and shout out as always to Big Dick MLJ for the intro. It is Thursday, September 12th. As always, a lot to talk about in the world of professional wrestling. But before we begin, Jensen, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Just fighting through these little morning colds that I keep getting with the weather changing. But outside of that, we're doing good. We're doing good, man. Got a lot of good stuff to talk about, as you mentioned. NFL is back. Very happy about that. Been wearing a lot of purple on the show lately. This hat that I wear often on the show, by the way, is a Minnesota Vikings hat. People might not know. Wearing a Viking shirt. I got a Justin Jefferson jersey on during our interview that y'all will hear at the end of the show with TWE Champion Darian Bengston. But I'm very happy that the NFL is back. My Vikings looked great on Sunday. Sam Darnold out there playing really, really well, which I'm very, very excited about. I think we got a shot against the 49ers. We beat them last season, so hoping we beat the Niners this week. Fantasy football wise, I've got it's hard to explain my league. We're not going to talk football very long today, but the NFL season did just start. But in my fantasy football league that we've been doing for my same buddies since high school, so we're going on like 17 seasons now. We play like two. It's kind of untraditional. We start two quarterbacks. We have defensive players and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, big fantasy football night for myself tonight. I've got Tua and I've got Jalen Waddle playing tonight, and also Dalton Kincaid. So big Thursday night football for my fantasy team today, and then big Monday night I've got Jalen Hurts as well and AJ Brown. So heavy on the Eagles, heavy on the Dolphins fantasy football. And obviously my Minnesota Vikings, I am rooting to the death. So, yeah, I'm very excited for the football season. I know that you're in a rough spot being a fan of the.
I don't watch football.
Yeah, the Carolina Panthers are rough. Listen, my favorite player of all time, Adam Thielen, is on your team. I feel very bad for him that he's made the decision to go there and do this to himself for a couple seasons, but he got paid. He got paid a lot. That was his goal. He couldn't accept, and I hate saying it, he's my favorite player ever. He couldn't accept being, the number 3 or number 4 receiver in Minnesota at this point in his career. And Carolina paid him a lot more money to go there and be the number 1 receiver, even though he's supposed to be the number 3 receiver this season, but he's still the number 1 receiver as of right now. But anyway,
he's at least the number 2 receiver. Deontay Johnson's number 1.
Well, but just based on the stats last week, Thielen did have the most yards of any of the receivers on your team. So technically speaking, he still is the top receiver, but he isn't the. They're trying to build around Bryce Young, and they're trying to make the younger guys their future. Like Thielen won't be there probably past this season anyway, because they're going to go younger, I'm sure.
But probably get traded at the deadline if they can help it.
I'd love for him to come back to Minnesota, honestly, and just be like, a guy there for like the red zone because he should end his career in Minnesota after the years he had there, and the fact that he is from Minnesota and he went to Mankato State and worked his way from the practice squad to being a Pro Bowl receiver and stuff. Like So I love Adam Thielen, but it was similar to the Kirk Cousins situation. Like I'm super, super happy we let Kirk go after seeing what he looked like for the Falcons. He looked terrible, and his Achilles is not healed, but it isn't just the Achilles. I said it preseason a lot. Michael Penix will be the starting quarterback for the Falcons before the end of the season, probably before the halfway through the season. Like Kirk's not going to make it the next few weeks because the Atlanta fans are brutal, dude. I've been to plenty of games here in Atlanta at the old dome and at the current Mercedes-Benz. Those fans are brutal. And Kirk Cousins is mentally weak, and when things aren't going his way, he becomes a head case. Huh? It's true.
Wow. Okay.
It's true. Kirk is super mentally weak. That's the main thing about him. He's our age, coming off of a complete Achilles tear, and has only won one playoff game his entire career. And the Falcons just gave him $180 million and like $100 million is guaranteed. It makes no sense. And then they drafted his successor, which Kirk wanted nothing to do in Minnesota. He basically left because more money and because we were going to draft JJ McCarthy, and he couldn't handle it. Then the same thing winds up happening to him in Atlanta anyways. They draft Michael Penix, and that fan base, if he continues to throw picks, because he also can't, he's not mobile. He was immobile before the Achilles. Now he can't. They're just running all these plays out of like shotgun and stuff because he can't even like drop back normally still. So anyway, I'm very glad we got out of the Kirk Cousins business, and I will stop talking about football because I know y'all do not want to hear me talking about football for very long. But I need to take this opportunity. We do have a big announcement about the future of the show. So I want to make sure to get some Vikings thoughts out there right now while I could. But outside of that, yeah, everything else is going really, really good, man. I'm very happy football's back.
Yeah, I watched 5 minutes, and that was enough football for me. I'll watch other teams that are actually competent and good for the rest of the season. My team sucks. So, as Jensen alluded to, we do have an announcement. This will be the last episode of the Spotlight on the main channel. Beginning next week, we'll be moving to Fightful Overbooked. So, same time, everything's the exact same. We'll just be on FightfulOverbooked.com moving forward. It is largely for synergies for me, because every other show I do for Fightful is on Fightful Overbooked. So I like having now just every show that I do on that channel. It makes things easier for me. And that's basically, and it allows for more breathing room because we have so many shows on the main channel, whereas on Overbooked, we don't have any shows on Thursday. So now this will be a standalone show on Thursday on Fightful Overbooked. Yes, Matt, I set that up purposely.
Yeah.
Maggie,
we're not going anywhere.
No.
No. We love doing the show, and we love, being able to give the spotlight to, indie wrestlers and promoters and other YouTubers and stuff. So like literally nothing about the show is going to change. It's literally just going to be airing on Overbooked instead of this channel. And like Jeremy said, I think it's actually a really smart move because like Jeremy just said, it's tough for us on Thursday morning sometimes when, for one, we're already a really early show. No one on the West Coast can watch us live. This is all because I have a shoot job, and this is only hours I can do the show. And then we're recording the interviews that y'all watch after I get off work. Some of these days, usually on a Tuesday or Wednesday night after I've already worked. So we still put, the same effort into the show. We're still going to give you literally the show you've been watching for the last 2.5 years or whatever is going to be identical, but it should be helpful to our show and to y'all as viewers too, because a lot of these, I've noticed in recent weeks as well, because I pay attention to the YouTube, recommended feed and stuff. There's a lot of weeks that our show doesn't even show up on like the YouTube feed, because by the time Thursday night rolls around, there's usually already been another Fightful like prediction show. There's been the ROH Impact show. Sometimes another interview has been uploaded on the site, and it's like by the end of that day, we might be the 4th or 5th, show on there, and like we don't even wind up on the recommended feed. You know what I mean? So we're hoping that this also helps kind of spread the show out again and gets some more eyes on it again, because it will be the only show on Thursday on Overbooked. So there won't be like all this other stuff around it. And we want all the shows to be successful. We want the post show, because us not doing the show on Thursday morning will probably help the review show or the prediction shows too, most likely, because we're not splitting the audience when we're both running live at the same time and stuff. So anyway, I'm looking forward to moving over to Overbooked. I've got roots on Overbooked. If y'all remember Degrassi Dudes with me and SP3, there's a handful of those shows that outdrew the viewership of Spotlight episodes. You know what I mean? So like I'm excited for the move over to Overbooked, and like me and Jeremy have said, literally all you have to do in the morning is just go to that YouTube channel instead of this one. 8:30 a.m. Eastern every Thursday morning.
It's just FightfulOverbooked.com, so you don't need to you don't really need to change anything. Hey, it's again just FightfulOverbooked.com. There's a direct link to it. You don't have to do youtube.com/FightfulOverbooked or anything like that. Just FightfulOverbooked.com. If you're not subscribed to that channel, please go over there and subscribe to that channel. Again, this show will be over there. I do a morning show 3 days a week with Joel Pearl over there. I do a non-wrestling show over there with SP3. Maggie, who's always in our chat, Maggie does a show with Rob Wilkins every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, coexisting. And we also have Wrestling Made Me Cry every Sunday at 12 on Fightful Overbooked as well. So we have live shows now. Since this show will be moving on Thursday, every single day on Fightful Overbooked outside of Saturdays. So live shows every single day on FightfulOverbooked.com outside of Saturdays. Maybe we'll have a Saturday show at some point. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I'm open to the idea potentially, depending on how long it is and what we talk about or something like that. Maybe expand it a little bit. I don't know. It feels like we got some room to spread our wings a little bit over on Overbooked. Like I said, I'm looking forward to it. SP3's in the chat. The homie SP3. Congratulations, by the way. I saw you got some new stuff going on. Very, very happy for you, man. I know you've been grinding. He says the street's been saying they want Degrassi dudes back, sir. Dude, trust me, I want to do Degrassi dudes again. I want to do South Park reviews and all that kind of stuff. It's that damn real life, in the shoot job. It gets in the way so often. But now that I'm going to be more on Overbooked, more consistently, we'll try to get more stuff going again. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, we're also making this sound like this is a bigger deal than it is. It's literally like the majority of y'all that watch this show are probably just gonna, like, you probably wouldn't even notice that anything changed. Like, you're just gonna see us pop up on YouTube where the little bell will ring and we go on the website, and so we'll be doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 2.5 years or whatever. Just I don't think anything will even even what we look like on the screen will be probably identical. We'll probably have the same, like everything will probably be the same, just over on another channel. So follow us over there.
All right, let's get into it. We got a lot of wrestling to talk about. Guys, leave a thumbs up on the video, leave a question, leave a super chat, question, comment, statement, read on the air, and subscribe to this channel and subscribe to Fightful Overbooked.
Over 1 million fans and a great number in the demo tuned in. And it was a great show, and I think it's been a run of great shows.
AEW Dynamite coming off of AEW All Out. We're going to kind of do an all-encompassing thing here. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to AEW, but I think the big topic coming out of AEW All Out was Jon Moxley suffocating, trying to murder Bryan Danielson, the AEW World Champion, turning on him. And then last night, kind of opening the show with the video package, the behind the scenes after video package of, democracy is dead. Bryan Danielson is dead. This is our company now. We try to do things your way. We are taking over. And then Pac later in the night, they attacked Private Party. Poor Private Party. First off, they were booked in a trios match and not even in this tag team gauntlet. You would think they would be in that, but no, they were going to be in a trios match instead. And then they got attacked anyway. And Pac was like, this company is broken. This company is now ours. The hostile takeover. Oh, there's even more to it than that. Darby Allin comes out because Jon Moxley finally has a talk with him. Jon Moxley's like, give me your title shot. And Darby Allin's like, no, I'll fight you instead. So then they set up a match for the title where the winner becomes the number one contender. Nigel saw this as an opportunity of, Bryan doesn't have a match at Grand Slam. Let me go get this match against Bryan Danielson. Now he's going to face Bryan Danielson if Bryan's cleared. Doesn't seem like it's a world title match. They're not billing it as a world title match, at least as of yet. Maybe they will. What'd you make of all of this, Jensen?
Excuse me. All of it ruled. Oh, this was all great. There's a lot to unpack there, obviously. So, like, I guess kind of going back to All Out, when the Combat Club turned, I thought that was smart. I mean, I'm sure you were happy about that. Just within like the last couple of weeks on this show, you were talking about how, disappointed you were in that group and like them being so, doing their own things and everything. So it kind of felt, and you weren't alone in that, by the way. I think a lot of people were just kind of confused at like the current status of the group and, if it was really working to build new people or whatever. And I like the way that how Claudio is the one who like started the turn, but then Mox was right behind him ready with that bag. So it was like this, planned out thing. We had seen him with Marina Shafir recently also. So like things were brewing. Pac being a part of the trios champions makes a whole lot more sense now. As far as like him being involved with those guys because of this plan that's been putting together. And then also I loved how Yuta wasn't in on it. Like he was trying to like help Danielson during the attack and went and covered his body up whenever the attack ended. So there's a lot of different layers there that I really like. And then as far as like Dynamite, we got more of the hostile takeover stuff, which, it didn't work out great. I don't think when the Elite just kind of tried doing something pretty similar to this, but
well, the Elite aren't serious. That's why that didn't like really work.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. You know, you're definitely right about them not being serious, but you're probably right about that being a reason why, you know, I mean, the fact that they went from attacking Tony Khan and him doing like NFL, owners meetings and stuff in the neck brace, and then that's still not really leading to much buzz for the storyline and so, like, so yeah, I'd consider that basically a flop overall, for being honest. Like that whole storyline, and then the team AEW that wound up beating them, it didn't seem like that big of a deal when it wound up happening. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But the reason I brought it up was because I feel we're kind of just coming off of a hostile takeover type storyline, but I buy it a lot more with this current group with Moxley, Claudio, Marina, and Pac. As far as later in the night when Darby and Mox interacted, I don't know if I said it. I don't know if I've ever said it on this show. I'm almost positive I heard Brian Alvarez talk about this on his show at some point. But somebody, I'm pretty sure it was Alvarez, I heard float the idea of Mox doing what he actually wound up doing last night. Like some people, I think, like were kind of predicting the idea of Mox basically, like, because he's been trying to talk to Darby for weeks, and so there were basically what it came down to was I was like, oh, that would actually be a really good idea if that wound up happening, and they wound up doing it. I think the story's smart and makes sense, and Darby and Mox's history, I like that they talked about how they met on the indie scene. But like even just in AEW, they've been linked literally since day one of the company. Like they were basically the two guys. Like Moxley was having to fight off the Inner Circle. Darby was having to kind of do the same at the same time. They had to become allies at the beginning of AEW as two of like Moxley was basically like the top baby face that was like, from the outside of the company. And then Darby was like the top baby face of like, the homegrown guys basically. And they had to band together. So like they've had a bond in an alliance since the beginning of the company. And now we're going to get like a legitimate kind of feud story between the two that has real stakes, because the winner will go on to wrestle for the world championship against Danielson. By the way, I think that Moxley's probably going to win. I think that Moxley's going to probably win the title shot from Darby, but I do think that Darby Allin, like, what this probably sets up long-term, and I would be great with this scenario, if Moxley is ultimately the one to take the title off of Danielson, which I don't know if that'll be the case or not, but I could definitely see a scenario where Moxley becomes the champion and Darby eventually does beat Moxley to become the champion himself. I feel like they're planting seeds for that like now. Don't know how long it's going to take to play all that out, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think that Moxley is going to wind up beating Darby, and I do expect Darby to be the AEW World Champion in the future. I don't know what's timeline wise. I'd say I feel like they got to do it within the next year. I mean, a year's a long time, but like I feel like Darby's got to be the AEW World Champion at some point. They've been building him the entire run of the company. All the stuff he did with Sting, he's held all the other championships. Like, he's got to be the world champion at some point. And him and Mox would make sense for the title if and when that eventually happens. So I think that this whole thing accomplishes a lot. The Mox turn, the BCC turn, I didn't even touch on the Nigel stuff, like, because that also ties into that, like you brought up. I don't think it's going to be for the title either, Danielson versus Nigel, but I think that's by design, because everyone would automatically expect Nigel to lose if it was a title match, because he hasn't had a singles match in, over a decade or whatever. So maybe there's a little bit more, there's a little more doubt of like Danielson winning, maybe because it's non-title and because of their history. Although, but I wouldn't mind if it was for the championship. By the way, I don't really mind one way or another. I expect Danielson to win either way, but. I thought that was awesome too. Good for Nigel, a guy that we finally saw come back to the ring at All In rather, and we figured that Danielson would want a match against Nigel during this retirement run. So it looks like we're gonna get it. So there's a lot to unpack there. I know I just rambled for a while, but that's kind of how I feel about all of it. I like everything I just mentioned.
I don't think Moxley's gonna beat Danielson for the title. I think Darby actually ends up taking the title from Danielson. I think Danielson wants that match against Darby. Two Washington kids. Like, I think he wants to. I just think he wants that match against Darby. I don't know if it's going to be at Wrestle Dream. I don't know if Darby beats Mox at Grand Slam to face Danielson at Wrestle Dream. It's very possible that Moxley beats Darby at Grand Slam, faces Danielson at Wrestle Dream. Danielson wins that match at Wrestle Dream, and then he faces Darby at either Full Gear or World's End, potentially. They get 2 pay-per-views between Wrestle Dream and the end of the year, so it could be at any point there. You can very easily heat up. You could very easily heat up Darby in the meantime. If he loses to Mox, he can win another Battle Royal. He can win another tournament. He can win another gauntlet, however they decide to do it. But I think we're going to get Danielson and Darby while Danielson is still the champion. I would not be shocked if Darby wins the title there. My scenario is still whoever faces Danielson at Wrestle Dream, Danielson wins, but he comes out a little worse for wear. And then Christian executes the contract and beats Danielson in front of his family at Wrestle Dream.
I hate that. Well, I shouldn't say I hate that idea. It's a good idea, but I don't want to see Danielson lose the title from like a Money in the Bank cash in. Basically, that just feels so wrong. But like, it's also completely perfect for like the character of Christian Cage. So like, I get the reasons you would want to do that. And by the way, just for what it's worth, personally speaking, I would prefer if Darby beat Moxley. Nothing against Moxley. I love John Moxley. There's very few people I have the level of respect I do for John Moxley, considering that guy is still, Darby mentioned it during his promo last night, the guy still makes indie bookings and like he doesn't have to do this at all. It's love of the game. I love John Moxley. But like, if it was up to me, I do think like I would prefer if Darby beat Moxley, I would prefer if Darby was the one actually to beat Danielson. Like, I think that would be awesome. I'm a big Darby guy, as y'all can tell. I was a fan of his. I've talked about it 1,000 times. The first time I saw him live was in a high school gym at the SCI in Chattanooga, and he wrestled Joey Janela, and they had this match that was like completely insane. I've seen them do some of the stuff on AEW since, but like Darby got his hands duct tape behind his back and did a tope suicida through the ropes to the outside, and like they were doing the crazy spot where like Janela did like a front flip and landed in a chair and stuff. And like, this was in like 2017 or something like that. I just remember back then being like, man, it's such a bummer that these guys will never wind up in the WWE because they're quote unquote too small or whatever. But AEW wound up coming around within the next couple of years. Darby never looked back. Like, and I feel like Darby's really earned it, and they built him great, especially with the Sting stuff and all. I mean, like, so I just want to kind of let people know personally, I can see a scenario where Moxley would wind up winning in the history that Mox has with Danielson. I could see them going with Mox, but personally speaking, I'd prefer if they went with Darby.
The thing with Moxley is I don't think he needs the title because we've kind of been there, done that with Moxley. But for a storyline like this, a title makes sense because it does feel like they're trying to make good on what they tried with the Elite, and it did fail with the Elite. That hostile takeover thing with the Elite just it started well with the attack on Tony Khan. It escalated very nicely with the attack on Kenny Omega, and then it went completely downhill basically after Anarchy in the arena, and then the Elite issued the challenge for Blood and Guts, and then it just fell off after that. And then it became like about Hangman and Swerve in a good way, but the Elite attack on Tony Khan and Kenny Omega were almost rendered not pointless because it happened and it's still two big moments in AEW time, but like you don't talk about them as being any type of importance to the AEW television show when they should have. Like, it really should have been these big moments in AEW history, and it's like, oh yeah, that just like kind of happened, and the Elite are now just a team that are going to face Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher for the tag team titles because apparently they have no other tag teams except They got to put Ospreay and Fletcher back together, and Okada is the guy who says bitch, and he's facing Takeshita, who's aligned with the biggest heel in the company, and Don Callis. It's like, oh, sure, that's something that makes sense. And here's Jack Perry, who's the TNT champion, but losing in world title matches. It's the Elite stuff just to me is kind of a mess. So this feels like a make good of like, okay, here's a real hostile takeover storyline with a true seriousness to it, which you kind of need in a hostile takeover. And that's why I think the elite stuff didn't work, is because they didn't have a serious tone to them to make it work. And so for a storyline like this, having titles makes a lot of sense because titles have kind of represented power. So having the world title here makes sense for Moxley. At the same time, Moxley having the world title feels like, okay, we know what Moxley is as the world champion. It's good. It's really good. But it's also like, does he need to be world champion again?
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure. Because also, I mean, another thing we got to consider, obviously, is like Hangman and Swerve, because those guys are going to be in that upper mix. Also, you know, Hangman especially, I think right now, like I would love to see him in that mix, or you know, going after a champion in Moxley. Or
Hangman's got to deal with Jeff Jarrett first.
Well, first, yes, but I'm talking bigger picture. Like, you know, I would expect Hangman. It's a good problem to have because there are a handful of people in AEW that I could totally see as the world champion after Danielson, or even after like Darby or Moxley. Like they got a good list of people ready to go for sure. But yeah, it's interesting with all these groups and these hostile takeovers they've attempted, because we didn't even mention before the Elite attempted it, we had that dud of the Undisputed Kingdom takeover.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like that was pretty similar. It was designed against MJF specifically,
It's
but
kind of crazy that angle is like not even a year old.
Dude, it was so bad. I mean, like when Taven and Bennett came out last night for that gauntlet, it was just like, it might have been like nothing even against Taven and Bennett. It's just that it's like their music hit and I forgot about them completely. And then they came out and I was like, oh yeah, no paw. You know, it's just like, this was supposed to be like the game-changing storyline for the company, you know. And I know that obviously Adam Cole getting hurt, you know, they killed what they could even do, and MJF had to take time off too. But so the timing of everything was terrible. But like AEW has been doing I'll keep it real. They've been doing a very poor job over the last like year or so at attempting hostile takeover type stories with these groups. But I do have a lot of optimism about this new Moxley group, like you do. They got a different vibe to them, and everybody involved. Like I trust everyone in the group. Like, you know what I mean? Like they have a really solid team of people in that group. So like, you know, they're gonna have badass matches and they cut good promos. Like, so, you know, this isn't a situation where they threw like Wardlow in there and they're just like, all right, well, let's try this again. Like, all right, you're gonna be the enforcer of the group, and you know, eventually, maybe you'll. Like, did he ever even turn on the Undisputed Kingdom or anything? Like, I don't think if he's even... They were just, like, trying to make him give them the title, but he didn't win it. So then they were just like, you're worthless to us. But, like, Adam Cole's still not around, but the group still exists. I don't know, dude. But anyway, I like this new Moxley group, but I did not like the Elite Hostile Takeover. I think the Undisputed Kingdom is ass. So...
What do you make of Nigel just basically coming out and... Because I don't think Nigel's going to beat Danielson, even if it's non-title. I think that would be dumb to beat your world champion, even if it's a non-title match and Danielson's like banged up. I've seen people float the scenario of Danielson won't be cleared. And so Nigel brags about essentially a count-out victory because he doesn't show up. That might turn the New York crowd against them.
Yeah.
When you're promising a Bryan Danielson match and everybody thought it was going to be Darby Allin, and now it's not Darby Allin. It's like, okay, well, Nigel's a good make good at the very least, and then you don't give them a Danielson match at all. That could really backfire if that's the way they go. And I don't think they will. I've just seen this idea floated.
I don't think that's a good idea. I get the concept behind doing something like that, but because Nigel, it just gives him more fuel to just talk mad trash about Danielson and build something bigger, I guess. But but the thing with Danielson, like we both know, is for all we know, he's backstage being like begging to lose to Nigel because Nigel hasn't been able to wrestle for so long. You know what I mean? Like the thing with Danielson, I'm with you though. I don't want to deep dive into this too much, but I'm with you where I don't think that he should lose to Nigel, whether it's for the title or it isn't. Like Danielson shouldn't lose until he loses the championship. And I highly doubt that Nigel McGuinness is just going to come in not have any singles matches since I don't even know what year it was when he stopped wrestling. And, you know, he's not going to just become the AEW champion with the roster that they have. And then, like, you don't know what he looks. You know, obviously, we want him to come out healthy. And the only reason they would even do this is if they're confident that medically he's fine to do this. I don't have any real concerns as far as that goes. But I don't think they're going to heavily invest in like the future of Nigel McGuinness until they see what he looks like more often in the ring, or if he even wants to do it often. He might just want to have, you know, a couple dream matches because he can. I don't know if he's trying to do this part-time, full-time, whatever.
He said he would like to do, you know, like a couple more matches. I don't think he wants to do any type of full-time. He obviously mentioned Danielson as one opponent. He mentioned Zack Sabre Jr. as another opponent, but it sounds like he would like to do one-off matches as long as they make sense. And obviously Danielson makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
100%. That's one that we could see coming, right? It was like, if Nigel can get cleared, we would expect him to wrestle Danielson before Danielson's done full-time. So I love that they're doing it. Nigel's cutting great promos. Like, he makes you really buy into, like, that he's been, you know, he's been able to do a good job over the years too on commentary, keeping this thing going with all the trash talk and stuff, you know? So it's like, you know, it just makes perfect sense.
Chi-Town Spurs leaves a super chat and says, hot take, I know, but Okada Takeshita is good, actually. The match will be great. I love Takeshita, and I hope they actually go full bore with him. It's my issue with it is he's aligned with Don Callis, who can't help but be Don Callis and be the heel, and then Okada is aligned with the Elite, who are supposed to be heels, and that's kind of the match. It just feels like a cool match for the sake of a cool match. I've talked enough about babyface heel alignment when it comes to this stuff, and it still just doesn't feel like they do a great enough job when it comes to that.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Alexander Fitzgerald says in the chat, I saw this on I think X as well, but Danielson versus Nigel's last match was in 2009 in New York City, and now it'll be almost 15 years to the date, because I think it was like September 24th when they wrestled in 2009, and I think it's September 25th. So it's almost like to the exact day 15 years ago in New York City. So that's pretty poetic as well. Pretty cool, full circle.
Yeah, look, I assume they're going to actually do the match, and they're not going to bait and switch anything out of it. And Nigel looked good in limited capacity at All In. Don't know what he's going to look like in a more one-on-one setting and in a longer kind of role. You know, he didn't really take any bumps in that. If you go back and watch All In, like, he wasn't taking anything like terrible on the head, neck, and even like back spine area. So I don't know what he's going to look like in a full-on match against Bryan Danielson. And maybe he can take those bumps, but it was very clear he was being a little protected in that match, as he should be. I just don't know what it's going to look like in a full-on match with Danielson. I don't think it should go super long or anything. You've already got kind of your longer matches. Like, I imagine Darby and Mox will get time. The tag team match will get time. They'll add something else to the show as well, but I'm sure we'll get plenty of time. So I don't think you're going to get like a super long match out of Danielson and Nigel at Grand Slam, but I am curious to see what Nigel looks like in in not so much of a limited capacity as he was at All In.
Do you want to move on to like Swerve and Hangman for a second?
Yeah, did they go too far? Were you uncomfortable watching Swerve and Hangman?
So I'm the wrong person to ask about something like this, considering all the death matches I cover for like for the Weekender and stuff on the indies. But like, so I've seen the syringe spot, man. Like, right when he pulled that thing out, I was like, that's going through his cheek, like, because I've seen that spot before. But it's not. I could one. Let me answer your question. Yes, it is too far. Even for me, it is too far. But
really,
but the reason I say that is because there are fans that I've literally seen say like they never want to see something like that again. They're like, I love the match, but I never want to see that happen again. You know. For me personally, was it too far? No, but like I could totally get why people would think that it was stabbing someone through the cheek with a needle. I could understand why people would want to see that. Now, that said, let's take that one point away, right? Let's just say that the syringe thing doesn't happen. Everything else happens. and even then, once again, this is I'm trying to balance, right? Like my own personal opinion on this stuff, because I'm very desensitized to it. Like for me, it was no big deal, but I know it was a polarizing thing in the match. And it's a lot of fuel for like AEW haters for sure to see something like that and be like, give them a reason to hate on the company and stuff, the sickos in the fan base. But I thought that the match ruled. I loved this cage match between Swerve and Hangman. I thought they told an awesome story. It wasn't like overly bloody, like they weren't bleeding each other's mouths and stuff again, like they were in the Texas Death Match. But those cinder block spots were insane. Like, because I'm expecting them to like crumble, right? Because we've seen cinder blocks in wrestling before where, Swerve does a double stomp or whatever, and the thing, disintegrates. They're, gimmicked, a gimmicked cinder block. But I don't think that this one was gimmicked. I mean, first there was the Vertebreaker, which is a risky as hell move to begin with without a cinder block there. Like the Vertebreakers, WWE just started letting people do that again whenever Cody did it for the first time, like over a decade recently. So that's a very protected move. And to do that onto a cinder block is very sketchy. And Hangman wound up like scraping his back on it because he landed on the corner. Could have been so much worse. If that would have happened on his neck, who knows what happens? God forbid. Obviously don't want to see that kind of stuff happen. And then there was a power bomb onto Swerve. Same kind of thing where he like hits the corner and like the thing doesn't give at all. I mean, they're just taking bumps on cinder blocks. I mean, this is completely insane. I'm hoping for the sake of safety that the chair at the end of the match was gimmicked. Although there was a gimmick chair whenever Cody got hit by Shawn Spears, and that thing wrapped around his head and gave him a massive gash. So, like, even when stuff's gimmicked, that doesn't necessarily...
The fact that it broke the way it did makes me believe it was, pretty gimmicked.
Well, when I'm not going to put anything past Swerve and Hangman because these guys are willing to, like, do anything, seemingly. But you would hope that there was, the precautionary measures taken where the finish of the match is going to be Hangman swinging that chair as hard as he possibly can into the head of Swerve, which, by the way, was an awesome visual and audio moment because they got the intended reaction there. Like that chair sounded like a gunshot going off, and I liked that was the finish too. The needle set it up, but at the end of the day, it was that chair shot that was just like, okay, there's nothing left. Like, honestly, and this is gonna sound like it's going too far, and I don't want to see this happen on a wrestling show, obviously, but that was as close as you can get to like Hangman whipping out a gun and just shooting Swerve. Just like, you know what I mean? Just like, that's like how it felt. Because it was just like the dude stabs him through the cheek, and then like the sound of that chair shot, you know what I mean? It was like he killed him. He killed him. Like there's no wrestling move you can do that's gonna get that effect. He killed him with a chair. Like that's how it felt. And I feel like Swerve's gonna go away for a while, but eventually we'll be right back to this at some point. Like this isn't over, which is also kind of exciting. I think it's over for a while, but it's that's how it felt. And I think that's how it was meant to come across, was like Swerve, like, and Hangman celebrating after the match too. He's like basically like crying and like tears of joy in like the entrance ramp because he's finally put this guy away after all this that they put each other through. But yeah, I thought the match was awesome. I've loved the feud. I'm looking forward to them doing it again at some point in the future, but I think they should stay away from each other for a while. And similar to some of the people we've already mentioned, I legitimately think, like, if Hangman Page was to be the next AEW World Champion, I'd be totally good with that. Like, they've got him in a scenario where, like, if he were to beat Danielson, I'm all for it. He's been positioned great. So how did you feel about? Did you feel like they went too far with this stuff? And yeah, how do you feel about the match? And then that Hangman finally got the win, even though it technically doesn't count, but the records don't really matter now anyway. So
I thought it was uncomfortable in the best way possible. Yeah. I mean, I've seen enough deathmatch stuff to where none of this really bothered me. Like if you don't like needles and stuff, I understand being freaked out about the syringe spot. But like I saw, I was like, oh, okay. Then he put it through his cheek. He's like, yeah, all right, sure. Like the cinder block stuff was the most uncomfortable, especially the power bomb. And then Jim Ross just being like, that cinder block don't care. Hey, that cinder block ain't hurt at all. I thought he was fantastic. I would pop for Jim Ross's commentary during this match. But yeah, when Hangman's back got scraped, yeah, that could have been a lot worse if he landed like head neck on it. Yeah, I was like, oh, the back being scraped is like probably best case scenario for him. And the chair shot, I suspect, and I know somebody mentioned Love Fro in the chat said SRS. Sean said it was gimmicked, and he's been told exactly how. I suspect these guys take the right precautionary measures and are not just going to go out here and just do unprotected chair shots to the head. I feel like we've learned enough about the business over the years to know that's not good. Look, these guys aren't taking it every week like they were doing in the Attitude Era. And, you know, that was a big cause of why wrestlers ended up the way that they did. This is kind of one-off stuff. Now, we have seen it twice in the past. Blood and Guts was July. So twice in the past 3 months. Now, I don't need this like every 2 months doing these chair shots to the head, gimmicked or not, because I think then you just kind of lose effect when you continue to do them in this manner. But overall, I was completely fine with it. Like, this is a feud that had breaking and entering, almost threatening a child, arson, like stalking, essentially. You had to go to some crazy lengths to end this feud. And that's exactly what they did. I thought it was the right way to kind of end things. And I had no issue with it. Swerve wasn't on TV last night. I think he should probably take another few weeks off, hopefully. Hangman was there. He's going to now wrong everybody, or he's going to right everybody who tried to wrong him. Or
he's basically going to make everyone pay who attempted to even like get in his way of getting it Swerve.
Yeah. So good. I like that side of Hangman.
Dude, Hangman rules. Like, I can't stress it enough. Like, Hangman, I know you're not saying anything different, but just for the chat or anyone who's watching this on demand later on, like, Hangman is on a short list right now of, like, my favorite guys, I'm super interested in his character. I think we talked about it last week, but I think the whole gimmick change was done the timing of it was done really well. Like, they were smart to pivot his character and everything about his entrance is different. His look is different. His attitude, everything is different. I mean, he seems like a guy who's just completely unhinged, but has legitimate reasons for doing the stuff that he's doing. And I still view him at the end of the day like the good guy. But once again, we talked about it 1,000 times. You could also view Swerve like the good guy because of the same reasons. Like, so I really dig Hangman Page and what they're doing with him right now. And I mean, I fully expect him to destroy Jeff Jarrett and then like go on to probably the world title scene again in the near future. Because there's not, I'm sure there's other big stories and feuds that they could think up to do with Hangman, but there's really nowhere else for him to go but the world title. I feel like at this point, like coming off of that Swerve feud and the people he's been beating, like eventually he's going to have his eyes set on the world championship again, you'd think. So can't stress it enough. Hangman Page is awesome.
And Danielson technically did stand in the way of Hangman getting it Swerve because Danielson beat him in the Owen. And if Hangman had won that match, he would have faced Swerve at All In.
Yeah, that's a great call. That's a great call. That could maybe be where they go. I could see Hangman beating Danielson. I could see that happening. And Hangman and Darby, like maybe Darby eventually beats Hangman for the title, which I think would make sense too, because they've got a little history and they're both day one AEW guys. So these are all
Darby. Look, Darby stood in his way too, because Darby beat him in that match.
Yeah, true. These are great points. I think, I could. If you had to put money on this, we're not gambling right now for real. This is not betting advice for anybody, by the way. Disclaimer. But if you had to put money on it right now, who do you think is the one who takes the title off Danielson? You don't have to say when, but like, who do you think would doesn't matter where the setting is, whatever the scenario, like, who do you think is at the end of the day is the one who gets the title from him?
I still think it's Christian.
Man, I hate that. Oh, I hate that. But he could be right. Rob Wilkins in the chat. What up, Rob? Good to see you. Skull Vikings. Looking great, man. Rob's a Vikings fan as well.
I think it's Christian. There's so much that he can just come in and pick the carcass. Like, and he's so smart. Like, the character is so smart that I think that's where they end up going. Otherwise, I don't know if there's an expiration date on this contract. I don't know if he's got like a year. If he has a year, I guess you can sort of wait it out and not do anything until All In next year. But I think Christian, the character of Christian is so smart. He will find that, because he almost did it at All Out when he came out there, but he got stopped by Moxley. But I think the character of Christian is smart enough to know when Danielson is vulnerable to beat him. I could also
with a good scenario.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next point. Of it could be Darby who beats Danielson, and then Christian comes out and beats Darby. I think Christian wins the title relatively quickly after Danielson loses it. And by that, I mean, if Darby beats Danielson, Christian comes out and beats Darby, or he just straight up beats Danielson. Moxley a little bit tougher, because if Moxley beats Danielson, kind of tough for Christian to come out and take it from Moxley. But Darby is an easy one to come out and beat.
Yeah. Yeah, these are all scenarios that make sense. Also, Boris says Mox. I thought he said Max for a second. Mox getting the title off of Danielson. Yeah, we talked about that before. I mean, that's very possible that Mox gets the title shot by beating Darby, and then he winds up beating Danielson. When he said Max, I thought about, because at some point MJF will probably be in that title mix again. Eventually, Ospreay will probably be in that title mix fairly soon. I mean, it's a spoil of riches. We talked about that before, but it's a good problem to have. Like, they got so much talent on this roster, but yeah, I think these are all possible scenarios. I think that scenario of Darby beating Danielson and then Christian ruining the moment, I think that is super likely. As of right now, though, I'm going to say Hangman's the one who beats Danielson. He's just too hot right now. I think they got to capitalize. There's nowhere else for him to go. And then eventually, by the time you do Swerve and Hangman again, it's for the World Championship down the line, maybe.
I don't think you do Swerve and Hangman until All In Texas. And if it's for the world title, go for it. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But I would not do Swerve and Hangman again until All In. Big stadium show. Like, it's very tough to top what they did in the steel cage. And I don't know if you can top that on a violence level. So you almost have to top that on a stage level.
Yeah.
And All In is the biggest stage you can do it on.
I'm with you. I don't know what Maggie's saying. Jensen, no. I'm not sure exactly what she's talking about.
Just in general, no. I agree, Maggie.
Just in general.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else from AEW you want to touch on before we move on to the next topics?
No, we still got a lot to hit. I thought All Out was a really good pay-per-view. Yeah, I know some people were maybe turned off by the violence. All In was the happy-go-lucky show. Everybody got their moments. And then All Out was the, hey, we're going to murder people show. Thought it worked.
Oh, they're saying Darby. Everyone's not everyone, but there's some people kind of roasting the idea of, they're calling, Rob said, the I Like Turtles kid talking about Darby. I like turtles. Man, that's already like 20 years old already now. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there that aren't huge fans of Darby. I get it to a degree, a little bit sometimes. I get some of the stuff, but I'm a fan of his, obviously. So anyway, yeah, we can move on to the next topics. We got a lot of stuff we still gotta hit on.
All right, let's move on to WWE.
I need to finish the story. In the WWE, the story never finishes.
You want to talk about Kevin Nash and Logan Paul?
Yeah, can you set this up and then I'll kind of explain?
So Kevin Nash does his podcast, as we all do, and is like, Logan Paul is not one of the boys because he doesn't know the difference between a work and a shoot, because Logan interviewed Hulk Hogan.
Hulkster.
Yeah. And The full quote is, he's not one of the boys. Where would he learn that shit at? Where is he going up and down talking jargon? In the building, everybody is on their own motor coach. There's no interaction. There's no socialization. You don't become one of the boys just because you're around them. From what I heard, he's making $5 million for limited dates, and all those other guys are out there making house shows. Fuck you. Fuck you. That's from the boys. Fuck you. I don't give a fuck how many people are following you. If it said you had 24 million Rhodes Scholars following you, you're fucking Jesus. You have a bunch of idiots. And then Logan Paul responded and said, I got people messaging me. They're like, Kevin Nash is talking shit about you. I said, damn, who is Kevin Nash? I mean that. I'm unfamiliar with this guy, which I think is his problem. I'm not as versed in the WWE and wrestling as I should be, as my peers are, but then how am I so much better than all of them? I don't have the answer to all these questions. I don't know how I can be the best in WWE, at least one of the best. I'm surely a top fiver, and I don't even do it full time. Imagine if I did learn a little bit. Imagine if I devoted, became one of the boys, learned the difference between a shoot and a work. Would that make me a champion? Fuck me, fuck you. You're one of the old guys who is bitter that I'm better at your job than you ever were. That makes you pathetic. This will be my sport, and I'll continue to make guys like you eat your words when I devote a little bit of time to it. Fuck me, fuck you.
So both guys are right. As I know, I'm not even kidding. Both guys are right. So I think this stems mainly from just I think Logan didn't know like the terms like work and shoot and stuff like during the Hogan interview. I think that's where like this came from because that's what
I don't believe Logan didn't know these terms.
I don't
believe that at all.
But there is a lot that Logan doesn't know. It's still, I mean, like I remember when Cody was on Logan's show. I mean, this was already like a year ago or whatever, but like I thought it was so funny because like Cody's explaining to him like the indie scene because like Logan's so on because obviously he just started in the WWE, which is obviously super. That's a massive outlier. Like most people, you know, obviously are working the indies or have like a collegiate background or something like fast tracks them into the WWE. But it was so mind blowing to me just hearing him talk to Cody and Cody being like, "Yeah, man, like you got to check out like this match. It's Ricochet versus this guy Will Ospreay, and like if you see that match, like you'll probably have like a new perspective on some stuff." And Logan was like, "Yo, Ricochet was on the indies." It's like, yeah.
I believe he doesn't know the whole history of independent wrestling in New Japan. I fully believe he doesn't follow any of that kind of stuff. I don't believe he does not know the difference between a work and a shoot, though.
No, but I'm just saying I could believe that there are certain things that we as wrestling fans are super used to and know about that like he just has no clue because like why
when a work and a shoot.
I mean, I think I don't know exactly if that, but that's the reason Nash is bringing up jargon is because of this. Like that's why he's saying that's why a lot of this stems from him not knowing these terms. I think because that's what he's saying is like he's not Logan isn't in a car going city to city with other wrestlers, so he's not learning the jargon. He's not learning the ins and outs of the business. He's not having to put in the miles and having to work 300 plus days a year like people from Nash's generation did. Nash even said during his response or during his rant or whatever about it, he was like, Cody Rhodes, if Cody was around during our era, he would have been one of us. He would have been one of the boys. Cody would have been working 300 plus days. He would have been in the road with the other wrestlers like he did when he came up in the WWE, driving around with Danielson and Cardona and those guys. And so it's like in Orton and, learning the business. Obviously, Cody came from the business, so it's, family and it's a little different for him. But the point is that I think both guys are right because Kevin Nash is basically saying Logan Paul is being handed a lot of what he's been getting. He makes a lot more money than most of the other wrestlers, but he isn't quote unquote one of the boys because he hasn't earned it in the same way that pretty much everyone else on the roster has. And he just doesn't have the same knowledge of the business at all. But Logan's also right about like, he is one of the best guys in the WWE. He doesn't even dedicate most of his time to it. And if he did, he probably would be consistently one of the best guys in the company. Like I totally believe that too. Logan, I don't know if he's top 5 guy in the WWE, but when he's around, he consistently puts on one of the best matches on the card whenever he's on the show. And he brings in a lot of eyes to the company and, and he clearly has some level of respect for it. I think it's surprising he wouldn't know who Kevin Nash was. I mean, I don't know if that was just.
I don't think he's
probably just saying.
think he's trolling
Right.
on not knowing who Kevin Nash is.
Or where Logan probably wants to be careful about, saying, fuck to Kevin Nash, though, is like, I don't know if he understands the bond between like Triple H and Kevin Nash. Like, you're talking mad shit about your boss's best friend, also, like, which isn't really smart to do. So
Kevin Nash probably shouldn't be talking a bunch of shit about Logan Paul either.
I'm not saying that he shouldn't either. You know what I mean? Like, both guys are. It's funny because both guys are right and both guys are wrong. It just depends on the kind of what points you want to bring up about it. But like, at the end of the day, I think they're both right, and I think they both believe in what they're saying for the most part. Like, Nash doesn't like Logan for whatever reason. He doesn't respect that he makes more money than the guys and doesn't know about the business and have to put the same miles in. But at the same time, it's also kind of wild coming from Kevin Nash, the guy who like was only about the money, who was all about having like doing like the pretty much the bare minimum in the ring. And listen, I am a massive Kevin Nash fan. I've got like 5 Kevin Nash autographs behind me right now. Like, I mean, I've got a signed Super Shredder Kevin Nash figure also. I mean, I'm a Kevin Nash mark lifelong. I met Kevin Nash back in like 1997 in Atlanta Airport when I was a kid. I love Kevin Nash. So you're not ever going to get any Kevin Nash slander from me, but I see both sides from where both these guys are coming from. And like I said, I think they're both right. I think Kevin Nash is being kind of an angry kind of vet that probably did go a little too far in what he was saying about Logan, probably didn't deserve it. Then Logan went like probably a little too hard back on him because Kevin Nash deserves the respect that he does deserve for being a legend and a WWE Hall of Famer and everything he's done for the business. So, yeah.
What if all this is a work?
We're going to get that big Kevin Nash versus Logan Paul match we've been fiending for.
Yeah.
It would actually wind up being good because Logan would bump his ass off out there for him and fly all over the place. But yeah. And listen, I know that there's a lot of people also like Kevin Nash hasn't done himself like a whole lot of favors with his podcast. I feel like I like Sean Oliver. I loved his You Shoot series back in the day. He really was like a pioneer for a lot of stuff that like we're doing right now, really. So those guys deserve a lot of respect for, what they're doing. But there's also been a lot of bad takes on Kevin Nash's show, in my opinion, too, that I don't really agree with. But you're going to get that everywhere. Like, I don't agree with most of what Jim Cornette says. I don't agree with plenty of what, other people say. But, I still think that they deserve to have the platform to, say what they want to say and have kind of that freedom to do that, And I think Kevin Nash has a really smart mind for the business. I think Kevin Nash is just a little too stuck still on kind of the old school mindset when it comes to a lot of this stuff. But you would expect him because he is one of the old guys now, so it is what it is.
I think it's just all work. I think we're going to get a big Kevin Nash, Logan Paul match at Survivor Series.
Hey, man, I know this sounds insane. I'm in. I would definitely want to watch that. But I hope Kevin Nash is in good enough shape that he'd be able to have a match if he wanted to. I doubt he could, but that'd be pretty inspiring to see a guy his age with all the injuries he's had be able to even do it. But I doubt that's where this is heading. So
at some point, Kevin Nash is going to show up to a WWE show just like he did at SummerSlam, and he's going to talk with Logan, and they're going to realize they have more in common than they think, and things will be fine, just like it was with Nash and LA Knight.
Yes.
It was all nothing. It turned out to be nothing.
Well, like Lofro says in the chat, Nash also knows that bashing Logan equals engagement and views. Which
Nash is very smart when it comes to this stuff too, and what becomes talking points on his podcast. So
yes, they meticulously put certain titles for their videos and stuff that are clickbaity, but not clickbait, if that makes sense. Like they're not putting stuff out there that's like untrue, but they'll put stuff that like makes you want to click it, but they'll actually talk about that stuff. But they might not always have the take that you agree with. But once again, I feel like Kevin Nash has more than earned his, the right to say whatever he wants to say about the wrestling business. Just like someone like Jim Cornette. I know people trash him all the time, and I understand the reasons to not like Jim Cornette. There's plenty I don't like about Jim Cornette too, but you can't sit here and tell me the guy isn't allowed to give his opinion on wrestling, given how much wrestling he's been involved in his whole life. I mean, we got to have perspectives from everybody. I feel like when it comes to everything, whether you agree with it or not, I want to know people's points of view, and then I want to form my. I think that's the most healthy way of forming my own point of view, because everything I listen to doesn't mean I'm automatically going to agree with it. I just want to hear, okay, that's how you feel. I don't think that's right. I kind of agree with this person more, but now I know how you feel about it. Now I fuck with you or I don't. You know what I mean?
I don't want to hear any of these people's points of view, honestly.
That's fair. I know you're also probably burned out on it because like so much of your job is having to listen to their points of view and transcribe it. So I'm sure
I like when they just tell these stories. Like
Yeah.
that's my favorite part of these podcasts is like, yeah, tell me what was going on in 1996 when you jumped to WCW. I know that story's been told a million times, but like that's the fun stuff. Like when I listen to basketball podcasts, I listen to Jeff Teague's podcast. You know who Jeff Teague is. Oh, you don't
the
watch
basketball player?
Yeah. He used to play for the Hawks.
Yeah,
I know
I know.
you just kind of got into basketball.
I've
but-
got his autograph actually, surprisingly. I've got a little
Okay.
8x10 signed by him.
So Jeff Teague has a podcast, and it's great because all he does is tell these stories about how he was like chirping LeBron and how he was trying to get under Karl Anthony Towns' skin, and Karl Anthony Towns was trying to back down DeMarcus Cousins, and DeMarcus Cousins like, what in the hell are you trying to do? Like, just give me stories of you on the court. I don't care about Jeff Teague's opinion on the game today because he's not playing. He's not there. He's not at the arena every single night. So I don't really care what he has to say about the game today. I understand he's going to have a different viewpoint because he played the game and like, I get that, but like the game has changed and he hasn't been retired for long or anything, but the game has changed. Stuff has changed. Players have changed. Teams have changed. So I don't really care what he has to say about the game today. What I do care about is the stories on the Hawks teams when they were battling LeBron in the playoffs, things like that. That's the stuff I like hearing from whether it's an NBA player, an NHL player, a football player, or a wrestler. I like hearing the stories about back in the day of like, yeah, we were going to this town and this happened. When Undertaker's telling stories about two hookers fighting in Thailand, that's good shit to me.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck what the Undertaker thinks about Gunther. Don't care. Do not care at all.
Gunther is their guy. They love Gunther over there. And see, that's the thing. That's why I'm talking about getting the different perspectives. What I basically do to get different perspectives on stuff, my YouTube feed, I'll kind of go through like these cycles of clips. I rarely listen to like full shows anymore, but it'll be like, Kevin Nash, Cornette, Solid Monster, JD, Alvarez. I mean, I'm getting the whole spectrum, right? There's plenty of stuff I agree with and plenty of stuff I don't. But I'm with you. A lot of the time, the most interesting stuff is just like the non-wrestling, just like what was going on the road, But yeah, we can move on from this. I don't unless you have anything else to add. I obviously I'm a fan of both guys. I can't say it strongly enough. Kevin Nash is one of my favorite professional wrestlers of all time. I love Kevin Nash and Logan Paul. You don't know how I feel about him on a personal level. He's got a lot going on outside of wrestling right now that he's dealing with. So we'll see how all that goes. But I've talked about it before. I met Logan Paul in person a couple years ago, and he was super, super nice to me. I know that that's not like, you can't always judge everybody based on that, right? Like plenty of people will be nice to your face or whatever, and they could be weirdo people, behind the scenes or in real life. I get you can't just judge everything by how people treat you, but Logan Paul treated me very, very nicely, and I very much appreciated the way that I interacted with him. And then he went on, and this is before he was even in pro wrestling. I met him at a UFC event when he was like dabbling and potentially doing MMA, but he was still doing boxing. He hadn't moved into wrestling yet. And I talked to him really briefly about some of his boxing matches, and he was super, super cool. And then he's done great in wrestling. So I'm a fan of both of these guys for like different reasons, so, and I could totally see a scenario like you're saying where they're working, where maybe didn't start as a work, but at some point between then and now, it's totally possible these guys have gotten in each other's DMs and been like, yo, a lot of people are talking about this. Like, where should we go from here? You know what I mean? So
Gunther trolled Bret Hart. Goldberg was his favorite wrestler.
It's awesome.
The segment ruled.
Yeah, Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn and Bret Hart being out there together is cool too. They got the history with Zayn when he kind of like debuted in the WWE. Already was in NXT, of course, but on like the main roster. He was like linked with Bret back then. That line from Gunther was genius. Everyone who knows the history between Bret Hart and Goldberg, I can't speak for Bret Hart, obviously. I understand why he's bitter, between the reason he got retired basically by Goldberg, like that sucks for a career like his, especially to end that way is tragic. That's nothing compared to the tragedy of Owen and like stuff that his family's had to deal with over the year. Like there's a lot of reasons why Bret Hart would be bitter towards the wrestling business and bitter towards certain people. And I don't necessarily blame him for taking every opportunity he can to bash Goldberg. Now, I'm a fan of Goldberg. I've said it 1,000 times. I'm Jewish. He was one of my heroes as a kid. I was a WCW fan from Atlanta. I mean, Goldberg was my guy. And I still love Bill Goldberg. I still actually enjoy when he randomly shows up and just squashes somebody. Like there's a lot of nostalgia there for me. So I'm a Bret Hart fan and I'm a Bill Goldberg fan. So I kind of hate that the two guys have been at odds for forever because of this stuff. But I don't blame Bret Hart for being bitter. I really don't. I get it. But for Gunther to use that on screen, that's the first time I think we've ever really seen anything on actual WWE television of that being mentioned, which I think is also cool because this new era of WWE is there's just so much loose. It's so much looser, if that makes sense. Like it feels like there's just so much more freedom to drop. Like when Vince was in charge, I don't think that line would have happened because he wouldn't have understood it enough or thought the fans wouldn't have understood it or whatever, or it hadn't gotten cleared by too many people. And Goldberg isn't in the company at the moment, so don't mention Goldberg or whatever. Now it's just everybody knows that Bill Goldberg and Bret Hart have had beef forever, and Bret hates Bill. So what better way to have Gunther get under Bret Hart's skin than say that his favorite wrestler is Bill Goldberg? I popped massively for that. So this is great stuff. And it continues to build Gunther versus Sami Zayn, which I fully expect Sami Zayn to I fully expect Gunther rather to retain over Sami Zayn, but it's gonna be a badass match just like it was at WrestleMania. And this was a good way to help continue to get there. It'd be cool if Goldberg showed up, by the way. If Goldberg actually showed up at some point and went face to face with Bret, we got the Shawn and Bret moment, but with Bret and Goldberg in the middle of the ring. But they don't shake hands and hug. Goldberg just kicks him in the head again. and then we're right back to square one. Obviously, I don't want that to really happen, but I think it'd be cool to see those guys bury the hatchet at some point in our lifetimes, though. It'd be nice to But once again, I totally get why Bret doesn't want anything to do with the guy, and he still talks shit about him. If somebody ended my career. Because once again, this isn't just a career. This is the career of arguably the best professional wrestler of all time, Bret the Hitman Hart. And it got ended by basically a reckless kick to the head. I mean, I'd be pissed off too my whole life probably if that happened to me.
I don't think we're going to get Goldberg and Bret burying the hatchet.
I don't think so either.
I don't think that's going to happen.
It had to make an Always Sunny style, dinner, squashing beef, making actual squash and beef, burying an actual hatchet in the sand. But yeah, I popped for it. There's not a whole lot more I can really say, I guess, but I popped for it. The people who got the reference popped for it. I think it was good heat for Gunther. Gunther rules. There's a reason Kevin Nash, reason that the Undertaker is such a big Goldberg fan or such a big Gunther fan. I'm getting everybody all mixed up now that we're talking about. I doubt he's a big Goldberg fan because Goldberg almost Bret Harted Undertaker, dropping him on his head and stuff. That was brutal. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation in itself. The Goldberg Undertaker match. That was a mess. Anyway,
it was a fantastic match. I love that match.
So bad. Goldberg knocked himself out and dropped Undertaker on his head and
Well, this is how I don't think Gunther is actually that big of a Goldberg fan because nobody came away in this segment injured. So
yeah. Oh right. Yeah. It wasn't authentic enough.
Yeah. He didn't get injured. Sammy didn't get injured. Bret didn't get injured. Everyone came out fine. So you can't be that big of a Goldberg fan if you didn't injure somebody, yourself included.
Yeah. Corey in the chat mentions, I love how he knew to use, quote, Bill Goldberg instead of just Goldberg in the presence of Bret Hart. He was very specific. Yes.
Well, because Bret always says Bill Goldberg as well.
Right.
The smile that came over his face before he said the line, and even Bret was smiling, they all knew what the line was about to be, and they just popped themselves with it rolled.
Yeah. This was, you got to mention Bill Goldberg because, there can't be any confusion that he may be talking about like Goldberg from the Mighty Ducks or something. Like it's Bill Goldberg specifically. Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah. Forgot about her Sister Act. That was like 30 years ago. Man, we're old. All right. That's probably enough about that topic. I don't even know what else. That was all the WWE, right? So we're now, okay. Yeah. We're still pretty good on time. Cool.
Are you going to Bad Blood?
Yeah, unless something happens to my tickets.
Okay.
That's the plan is to be there.
You excited to watch Cody lose the title?
Oh, dude. We'll talk about that once we get closer to Bad Blood. But I do plan on being there. Like it all comes down to, I saw the tickets were pretty expensive. But I've talked about it before. My brother, my brother's a boxing trainer here in Atlanta, and one of the guys that he trains has box seats at State Farm. That's why I'm able to go to a lot of the Hawks games and stuff like that. Whenever people don't want the tickets, he sends them to my brother kind of like last minute. But we gave him like a really big heads up that we wanted to go to Bad Blood. And he's usually good about letting us get like Raw tickets and stuff because usually people don't want the wrestling tickets. So as long as nothing crazy happens, I do plan on being at Bad Blood. They're live. So
Cody's going to lose the title to, I've decided it's going to be Randy Orton at Bad Blood.
That was my prediction actually a few weeks ago. If you remember, I was saying that I thought it was going to be Randy Orton and Cody at Bad Blood. There's a good chance of that because Gunther and Randy. I was like, how are they going to keep Randy, heated coming off the Gunther loss? But I felt like he was probably going to be heading towards a match with Cody. I could see Cody losing in Atlanta. I could see it happening. I think it's a terrible idea and they shouldn't do it. And I don't want it to happen, but I can see it happening, unfortunately.
Just get ready. Preparing you. That's all.
Our product is what it is. We're going straight up the middle.
TNA Victory Road is on Friday because we needed another TNA show 2 weeks after we just had a TNA show. Are you excited for Moose and Nick Nemeth?
I mean, not like particularly excited, but I'm sure it'll be solid. I mean, Nemeth is always Nemeth is always going to have a good match against everyone. And, I'm happy he's getting a run with his TNA championship. I see no reason for Moose to defeat him. Moose has been the champion multiple times. So the reason I'm not like more excited for it is because I feel like I'm pretty confident that Nemeth's going to retain, but I think it'll be a decent match. Like I'm more looking forward to some of the other stuff. Like I think, the match I'm looking the most forward to is Wentz versus Speedball, like personally. And I think Joe Hendry versus Josh Alexander will be really good. There's good matches on the show. But I'm not particularly excited for Nemeth versus Moose, but I expect Nemeth to retain. Oh, sorry. Are you good? Jeremy's muted for a second. But also, as far as other matches, like I said, Wentz versus Speedball, I'm really looking forward to. I would expect Wentz to retain since he just recently won the championship. And they've got that feud going between him and the Rascals, just going across, both shows. But that match in ring should be, I think that'll be the match of the night as far as in ring goes, will be Wentz versus Bailey.
I'm sure it'll be a great show in ring wise because the wrestlers nowadays are just really good. And they're going to do a title change. I don't know what title. Probably the Knockouts tag team titles because it feels like those things change every other pay-per-view. And if Spitfire loses, they got to break up. So I think that title will change. I don't know if they're going to do any. Maybe the tag team titles. Maybe because that's the system against ABC. So maybe that title gets changes. But I don't think we're going to get an X Division title change because I think it would feel weird unless they just wanted to do a thing of they knew that Wentz was going to beat Wes Lee. So they thought it'd be good to have Wentz as the champion beating Wes Lee at No Mercy. Because I assume Wes Lee's going to beat Wentz at the CW premiere in the street fight to get that win back. So maybe they just want to go ahead and get the title off of Wentz before he takes that loss to Wes Lee on NXT television. But I think they like having the X Division title on NXT TV. I think that looks like a cool, prestigious thing. The same way Jordan Grace is the Knockouts champion on NXT television. But otherwise, I don't think we're going to get any title changes. I don't think Moose is going to beat Nick Nemeth. I think they're setting up. Really think they're setting up Nemeth and Alexander again at Bound for Glory.
Yeah,
but it's possible they go. It's possible they go Hendry and Moose at Bound for Glory, and that's the big crowning moment for Joe Hendry.
it's possible. I mean, Hendry and Moose do have history. They had a really good match on pay-per-view like a couple years ago. I can't remember what show it was, like Slammiversary or Bound for Glory or something. I remember them having a standout match on that show. Personally speaking, this is me personally, I would have Alexander be the one to beat Nemeth, but I've also been the one who's been like rallying this whole time for the idea of the North holding both titles, doing the 2-man power trip over both shows. So that's maybe some wishful thinking, but I think it makes sense though. But I think both scenarios make sense. I could see Moose versus Hendry or Alexander versus Nemeth, but I'm gonna say Josh Alexander is the one who ultimately beats Nick Nemeth for the championship, and then maybe Joe Hendry down the line beats Alexander because they'll have all this history that they can come back to and reference and stuff a little later on. And also, I don't know what Joe Hendry's future looks like either. Like, I don't know how locked in all these people are to TNA specifically. Like, I don't know if Joe Hendry has plans to just like move over to NXT when he gets the chance. You know what I mean? Like, I feel
Hendry's contracts for a while.
Okay, I have no idea what these people's contract statuses are, but that's just in the back of my mind too. As far as like, they're already kind of one company in a lot of ways, NXT and TNA, because of all the back and forth with the talent. But it also seems like kind of a tryout for a lot of these people too, in a way where it's like, if NXT really likes them, when they become available, they're probably going to sign the people that they like, I would imagine. But if Joe Hendry's got time left, and he's going to keep killing it, doing what he's doing, I think.
Yeah, Hendry's contract's for a while. Josh's contract's coming up pretty soon. Pretty sure it's February. It's Josh's contract. And Josh just did an interview where he said he doesn't want to leave TNA. He can't. His exact words were, "I can't say I want to leave TNA, but I'd be pretty foolish to not at least listen to what else is out there."
He would. Everyone should find out what their market value is, I think. I mean, there's value sometimes to signing an extension and stuff, as a fan of people and a fan of like sports and stuff. For instance, when the Vikings, for instance, they signed Justin Jefferson to an extension before the season. They just signed Harrison Phillips to an extension the other day. Like, as a sports fan, I love the extensions because it's like the people I like on my teams, because then it's the security of knowing they're going to be around for a while. But as an athlete or a talent, I think you're doing yourself kind of a disservice not testing free agency, but you also don't want to shoot yourself in the foot either. Some people overestimate their value. I'm not saying Josh Alexander's in this boat. I think Josh Alexander would be valuable anywhere. So I think he would have a lot of options. I think he should test free agency. But there's also plenty of people that think they're bigger than they are, if we're being honest. And they think that they're going to go out in free agency and kill it. And in the process, they turn down an extension, and then that company changes their mind because now they know, no one else wanted you, so we're going to give you a lower offer if you want to stay here. So there's two sides to free agency and negotiating and stuff like that. But I think Josh Alexander's in a really good position because he's like one of the faces of TNA and has been for years at this point. But he's also got the talent and the history with other people and these other companies that he could totally wind up in the WWE, he could wind up in AEW. He's the kind of guy who will have good options, I think.
Will Chisholm said, what if it's Cody versus Jacob? Oh, Jacob beating Cody would rule.
I don't think that they're going to strap up Jacob this quickly. But I do think he's in for a massive push, obviously. I mean, he's basically leading the bloodline right now. Whenever Solo's not around, he's the main guy. And I guess, are they doing Freebird rules with the tag titles with God and Jacob?
No, they're Judy's titles. It's Tama and Tonga. They basically gave the title over to Tongaloa because.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So
I forgot.
Jacob's got to protect Solo.
That's right. Okay, cool. And then we got one more show to preview. Also, I think I'm always a fan of Jordan Grace. I'm looking forward to, I always love seeing Jordan Grace wrestle. Don't know how her and Wendy Chu's going to go because Wendy Chu's character has gotten really strange. And her in-ring style is different, but I think it'll make it work.
Apologies. Yeah, I'm battling still COVID, so
yeah.
MLW Fightland is also this weekend. Are you going to that show?
No, I don't think so. I was thinking about it. It's going to be at Center Stage in Atlanta, which is one of my favorite venues to watch wrestling. But this Saturday night is also the big UFC Noche show in the Sphere, and I'm going to have. I had already invited friends over to watch the UFC. I would do the dual screen thing where I'll watch both shows on 2 screens with my buddies. And the UFC shows, like, the pay-per-view won't start until later, but, they do all the prelims and stuff, and I don't want to have to rush back, and, like, if people are waiting outside my place to get in and stuff. So, like, it makes more sense for probably me to just watch MLW on a dual screen along with the UFC. But obviously, we support MLW. We had Cruel on the show just a few weeks ago, who's challenging for the championship against Kojima. I'm very much looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a great show. I just don't think I'll be there live.
I feel like Cruel's going to win the title.
He should. I mean, they positioned him in a way that, like, he's pretty much been unstoppable. He took over Contra Unit from Jacob Fatu. He was Jacob's last match before leaving to go to the WWE. The only thing that's unsure about him, and he said it on our show, is, Cruel has been honest that he doesn't have a contract with MLW and he is keeping his options open, but he is under a handshake deal where he's not going to, like, up and bail on MLW if they have plans for stuff. So the other side of this too, of course, is that Matt Riddle has been really heavily positioned as the next challenger for the championship. Also, like, they've been building him like he's going to be the champion in MLW eventually. And I could see a scenario where the way I think it's going to eventually long-term play out is I think Cruel will beat Kojima to win the MLW championship this weekend, and then eventually Matt Riddle is probably going to be the one to finally be the one to beat Cruel, my guess. So
I don't think anybody in MLW has, like, a super long-term contract, like,
yeah, it's pretty rare. Yeah, because it's caused problems.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of people who would get in under those, then they want to get out and, like, work for other companies, and, like, it becomes a problem. So
Kojima obviously still works New Japan shows, so it's not like he has this big contract with MLW. I don't think Riddle does his own thing, works a bunch of independent dates. So the fact that Cruel is basically on a per appearance deal isn't really out of the ordinary when it comes to MLW. I feel like the majority of their roster is on a per appearance deal.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair to mention. I mean, even like Alex Kane was the champion before Kojima, and Alex Kane mainly works the indie scene. I mean, he's grinding the indie constantly, but he's still obviously still in MLW. Excuse me. He's going to be on the show as well. Him and Mr. Thomas of the Boomaya Fight Club are going to be taking on the Andersons, Brock and CW. I'm actually looking forward to that match too. And it's great after all these years, CW Anderson, not being a real Anderson by blood, is actually teaming with a real Anderson now. So, so good for him. He's kind of part of the family now.
That match is fine, but they've announced that Alex Kane and Mr. Thomas are challenging for the tag titles at the next show already.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, so I don't know if they basically gave away their own result here, or they're going to have, like, maybe it gets switched up. I don't know, but it was weird that they announced that they would be challenging for the tag titles at the next show before they do this match.
Yeah, that is strange to do that, because I feel like the Andersons had a chance to maybe even win this, but I mean, obviously the smart choice would be Boomaya based on the history of them in the company, and then also if that's already been announced for a tag title match. I think Dijak versus Thatcher will be a solid match. Dijak, I'd imagine, will win, considering they have the whole countdown clock to Doomsday. They have big debut for him, and Thatcher, like, he lost just recently, like this past week or so in MLW. It's not like they're having Thatcher on like some like giant winning streak. So I would imagine Dijak will win this one probably fairly handily. I'm looking forward to Nakamura versus Adam Priest. Shout out to any style Adam Priest for this one. I'd imagine Nakamura will probably win, but I'm going to take Adam Priest. He's our guy. I'm going Adam Priest to win the match. I'm going to take the homer pick there with our guy, but I hope this is a breakout match for him, because, like, so far in MLW, Priest has been involved in like really short stuff to like put other people over. I hope he has like a real match against Nakamura, and I'd love to see him win with the DDT. That'd be badass. Kenta versus TJP, and Mystico versus Bad Dude Tito, or the Opera Cup semis. I'm going to take Bad Dude Tito to win the entire thing. It's kind of like a sleeper kind of Jericho kind of pick in this thing, as far as like, when Jericho won the championship, he was kind of one of the guys that was like, oh, maybe he'll do it, but probably not. I think I'd go all the way with Bad Dude Tito to see where it goes. They've been pushing him really well in the company. So that's pretty much, I know I'm like rushing through stuff because I got to clock in for my shoot job, but that's kind of my preview of MLW. I think there's going to be a lot of good matches. But my predictions, I'll take Boomaye Fight Club. I'll take Dijak. I'll take Priest. I will take Kenta to go to the finals against Bad Dude Tito, and I'll take Bad Dude Tito to win the whole thing for the Opera Cup. And I'll take Magical Kruger over Kojima to win the MLW Championship.
Real quickly, because let me hit the indie spotlight.
I'm gonna give a big motherfucking shout out.
Tim Bosby against Jeremiah Plunkett from SCI. You have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Tim Bosby on the show because he is a guy who will eventually. I'll eventually try to get him for an interview. He's very early in his career. He's only been around for like 2 years, but just in like recent months, he's coming up way more on my radar through like the SCI and TWE and stuff like that. He recently got a win over Warhorse, the former IWTV Independent Wrestling World Champion, in that leading to what looks like a bigger overall feud between the two and TWE. For Bosby to get the win over Plunkett's a big deal because Plunkett's a legit veteran. He's been in the Tennessee scene forever, and for Bosby to get a clean win over him on the SCI show, Battle for Sale Creek, which just happened this past weekend. The reason I wanted to bring up Tim Bosby's name is because he's someone I would recommend people start becoming aware of now, before he really starts his big come up, because I can tell he's in for a really big push in the Southeast. He's been getting big wins against big names in convincing fashion. He's a he's a high school wrestling state champion out of Tennessee, and he's still very new. So, he's learning. He's not, it's almost like watching level up on the indies for this guy. Cause you have a lot of his moveset and it's like F5s and ankle locks and counter mutilations and stuff. You can tell he takes a lot of inspiration from guys like Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Bryan Danielson, but he's the kind of guy who has like the actual amateur wrestling background and the skills. He throws like really good German suplexes, really good single legs and stuff like that. So I can tell there's big things in the future for this guy, and he's been really protected up to this point. And I would expect him to get a really big push, like I said, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he wound up becoming like the TWE champ. Like he might be the one to beat Darian Bengston potentially at some point, who's you're going to be hearing from here in just a second, Darren Benston, the TWE undisputed champion. So I just want to throw it out there and shout out Tim Bosby on the show today. People go check out his stuff. Check out his matches from TWE, check out his matches from SCI. I think he's been popping up on Action lately as well, but he'll be all over the Southeast, and soon enough he'll be all over the country and all over the world. And you'll be able to say, hey, I was watching him all the way back when Steven said to go check him out. And then, he'll be a big star. So I got to clock in for work because they're going to complain that I'm late.
Jensen, appreciate you as always.
Next week, everyone, don't forget, Fightful Overbooked going forward. Same exact show, just like what you saw today, just over there. We appreciate all the support. I appreciate you, Jeremy. I appreciate the chat. And I'm very thankful for the 2.5 years or whatever it was that we were able to do this show right here on the Fightful main channel. It's just time for a new chapter. But follow us along for the journey. Nothing's changing. Love you guys. Hope you all have a great weekend. Skol Vikings.
Appreciate you as always, Jensen. Guys, let's get into it. Our interview with Darren Benston, who is the long reigning, over a year, TWE champion. He was ranked 251 in the PWI that came out this week. So he was 251 in the PWI 500. We talk about that. We talk about his appearances on AEW Dark and ROH television. He has a no contest in AEW. Usually the kind of enhancement guys, they always lose. He actually has a no contest on his AEW record. So we talk about that. We get into a lot with Darren. It was a really fun interview. Hope you guys enjoy it. In the creator spotlight, Darren Benston.
Welcome to the Creator Spotlight here on the Spotlight on Fightful. I am Stephen Jensen, joined as always by Jeremy Lambert. And our guest today is the longtime reigning, defending, undisputed TWE champion, the People's Prince, Darian Bengston. Thank you for joining us, Darian. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We've been covering TWE a lot here on this show, and I cover it as well over on the Fightful Weekend or over on Select, and we're big fans of what you're doing, really all over the place, but especially in TWE. What's it been like, representing that company? I mean, you're still really like early on in your career, but they've really put a lot of a lot of responsibility and a lot on you as like their champion and the representative, and you've been the champion for like around a year or so already, right?
Yeah, over a year. I think I just passed 400 days, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, so yeah, how's that experience been being like this one of the centerpieces of that company?
It's been really, really cool. Some very, very crazy names have come out of there, and to be added to that list and to have been able to share specifically a TWE ring with so many people who are legends, not only of the Southeast scene, but specifically the independent scene, has just been really, really cool. And TWE is so unique in that we run twice a month. So having to do, shows every other week there and having that presence and still keeping that crowd has been really, really cool. And, having it sit on my shoulders is kind of like the forefront of the show has been, a really, really invaluable experience.
What's the reception been like from the crowd? Because they seem to be really behind you, and like that TW arena has become like a really special place as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an electric crowd, and for TWE to be around for now 11 years, and to still have a consistent fan base, because that's one thing, it's hard to run twice a month, and to still retain that. But our crowd is so invested, so into it. I mean, like, if you've been to a TWE show, there's a very distinct section of the crowd that have like bootleg airbrush t-shirts of me that they made themselves and bring to every show. There are like people who like write my name on their foreheads and stuff. It is a very enthusiastic and very enthusiastic crowd. We have problems. There's a woman named Sherry. She's so lovely. She has tried to interfere on my behalf on so many occasions, and I have to just beg to not get disqualified each time. You know what I mean? Like, we have really, really diehard fans, and I'm very, very thankful for it. It is crazy, and to have been a kind of good guy, hero, champion for over a year in the crowd to not be sick of me has been a very cool experience. Makes me feel very accomplished, and I'm thankful for it.
You say holding the title for a year, how do you essentially try to keep it fresh? I know it's only running twice a month, so you're not overexposed week to week, but it's still having the title for that long, like to keep the crowd on your side and keep the crowd interested. Like what have you done, I guess, in the past year to maybe little things that maybe people aren't picking up on to really keep the title reign fresh?
Definitely. I mean, the thing is that I feel even after I first won the title, I was still very much the underdog. I was still very much like the new guy in town. And so I think the change over the past year is that I've been a fighting champion. I've taken on all comers, and it's not just me, challenging myself against the elder statesmen, but now being one of them myself and taking on challenges from the people who are younger than me and I don't know about hungrier, but that are chasing my spot, and to have to fight the battle both above me and below me as far as kind of rankings is very. I think that keeps it fresh, right? Because you're seeing me against these household names that everyone knows, as well as like someone could surprise me out of the blue and, really become an issue. So I think that element of danger, is always what keeps them invested and what keeps them, trying to see if I'll be able to figure out this puzzle. It's very Sherlock Holmes. I feel like that building is just like, how is he going to figure it out this time? But it's been very cool.
Yeah, I like that aspect of it, because like there are so many different types of wrestlers that you've been challenged by, and like all these different types of matches you've been having, and your style is very diverse. Like you're really good at like all different aspects of pro wrestling. So like all your title defenses feel fresh. And we're going to jump around a little bit, but like you mentioned, getting in there with like big names as well and stuff like that. I know Cage Match isn't always the most accurate source of all wrestling information, but when you look at your Cage Match, you go to the beginning of your career, it says that you started in 2019, and then it shows only 3 matches between 2019 and 2020, and that's, COVID and all that happened at that time too. And then the next thing is, you know, you're against Powerhouse Hobbs on AEW and you start wrestling guys like Wardlow. So it's like, what was that be like? You know, I mean, it's like, and I don't know how much cage match is missing between 2019 and 2020 and 2021, but like, can you tell us about how, I mean, you had to have been so new and like you're on AEW against household names, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, no, that's accurate. I was maybe like 5 months into training when COVID hit. So I'm like 5 months, brand new, trained out of the London School of Lucha Libre. And when COVID hit, I wasn't able to renew my visa because the embassies were shut down. So I was basically like forced, for lack of a better term, to move back home, which, you know, I wasn't a wrestler before I moved to England, and I didn't, you know, so I didn't have any connections, or I wasn't tapped into the American independent scene at all. So I really needed to like figure out what I was going to do. And luckily I was close friends with Anthony Agogo, who's in AEW. And, you know, he was also moving to America and was like, yeah, I don't know anyone out here. So if you want to move to Atlanta to me, you know, with me, we can, you know, do that. So that's what we did. And that ended up with me having my second ever singles match against Powerhouse Hobbs. I was very new and things happened very fast. And I kind of had to adapt on the fly. And I think that's where my style of wrestling came from, because when you're in that situation where at the very start of your career, you're wrestling Wardlows and Hobbses and Satnam Singhs and whoever else, you're not going to be able to lift a lot of them up or knock a lot of them down. So I tried to figure out a way to like really capitalize on what kind of stand-up offense that I could do to any person could be the most effective and the most flashy and the most all of those things. So it's kind of like innovation by necessity. Yeah, so that's funny. That's funny you noticed that. Yeah, so I was like 5 months into training, and then the next thing I knew, that's what I was doing. And it was very intimidating, but here we are now.
Did they know that, like, okay, he's trained, but this is only like his second singles match?
Luckily for me, so directly going from the London School of Lucha Libre, which is super prestigious in its own right. Greg Burch, head trainer, Gary Vanderhorn, gave us Will Ospreay, gave us Nina Samuels, Cara Noir, litany of people. I then immediately go to the Nightmare Factory, so I'm being trained by QT Marshall. And QT is, you know, very, very trusted because he is a very, very, very good wrestler and a very, very good trainer. And so I think just like by proxy of being adjacent to him lends me more trust in that regard. Because, yeah, I think if it was anyone else that was like kind of off the street, 5 months trained, they'd be like, okay, no, maybe not. But yeah, just right place, right time, right connection type thing.
What were your experiences like training with the Nightmare Factory? I actually saw you live. This was already years ago now, but I did a little bit of commentary for Championship District. I can never say it. Championship District Wrestling, CDW, out of Atlanta, yeah. and I went to all the Battle Slam shows too. So like I saw you a little bit around Atlanta as well. So yeah, just experiences when it comes to that.
Yeah, the Nightmare Factory was such a really special experience, and I didn't have like a typical route through it that most people did. I moved to Atlanta maybe 2-3 weeks before the first Nightmare Factory camp started. So I was never like a camp student. I was always just kind of like adjacent and kind of in my own bubble, and was fortunate enough to get to really be under the tree of QT for a while. And he is, you know, I can't say enough about how underrated, and I don't know, like he's just unbelievable. Like one of the most talented people I've ever seen or just touched in a ring. Like he's really, really exceptional. And I got so many other really cool experiences. I got to train with Dave Taylor at the Nightmare Factory for an entire summer, which was changed the game for me, and especially like the way that I wrestle in my style. And I felt like it really legitimized me as a British, you know, wrestler, because I felt like I was learning from the source and with the intent and the understanding of, you know, what the source material was. So yeah, I had an unbelievable experience there, and I'm very, very thankful for it.
Would you compare? I know it's hard to do this. It's hard to compare wrestlers to one another. I mean, everyone's different in their own ways. But you've had big matches with guys like Dana McCabe, for instance. Is that something that you felt like having training with someone like Dave Taylor really helped prepare you for someone like a Dana McCabe, and like to know that they're especially when McCabe was wrapping his career up, every match was a big match. And so, like, for you to be in those spots, did that make you feel more prepared? Because it's like, man, I have been preparing with guys that are like that train the kind of people that shaped the ring style of someone like Dana McCabe.
Absolutely. The match with Dan, the first match, which was British rounds,
right?
My first ever British rounds, and would have been, I believe, the April following my training with Dave. I don't think I would have been qualified, ready, or any of those things for that match without Dave. And around that time was when people really started to consider me a technician. I think before, kind of like what you were saying earlier, I don't say it about myself, but you were saying like, I was kind of skilled at everything. And while that's great, I feel like there's a lot of wrestlers right now who are skilled at everything. And so I think what makes people stand out, what takes people to that next level is being a specialist. And I felt like training with Dave and then wrestling Dan in the British rounds was when people zeroed in on me as like a specialist and a technician, which has made all the difference in my career, because I feel like the more stylized I've become, the more I've leaned into kind of my own lane, just the more everything has changed for me, which has been really cool.
Jonathan Gresham talks about that, of how if everyone just does everything great, then and nobody has a weakness, where's the struggle at? Like, you've got to have a weakness somewhere. Like, if striking might be your weakness, okay, you're a good striker, but someone is a better striker, that's actually a weakness for you. And one thing I listened to a past interview you did with our friends Mike and Reg on Indeed, and one thing I really love, you called your style catch flow, right? Catch flow wrestling. I think that's like such a cool name for the style that you do, and the way you described it, of like I think you said it was like Harlem Globetrotters, like the And One mixtape of the Harlem Globetrotters when it comes to like flowing wrestling. I thought that was just a really cool way to describe it. And so I kind of wanted just more background on putting that together and making that your own kind of style.
Yeah, absolutely. So a huge part of that goes to the commentary team of TWE, which is primarily Mose and Dylan Hales. That commentary team switches up a bunch, but they are, as commentators, basically the narrators of our story and the people who communicate the message to the audience, right? And I feel like some people really undervalue a commentator's part in what it is that we do, because the thing is that what they are telling people is what people's perception of you is. So the more and more I wrestled at TWE, I would hear them talk about the things that they liked and they saw and they noticed about me. And a lot of it was like technical proficiency. A lot of it was that I was unorthodox, outside the box, things like that. So when I listened to them more, and I think Mose was maybe the first person to call me a mixtape wrestler, and it was just getting kind of thrown out. And I think Dylan said that I wasn't a tribute act to Johnny Saint, but I was a remix of him. And I think through there, I had heard a piece of wrestling philosophy passed on about how the Harlem Globetrotters are to basketball what pro wrestlers are to combat sports. And understanding that comparison of that, some of these people are qualified to do each other's job, but not everyone can do both. And as we see in wrestling and in combat sports, there are people who can do one or the other. There are people who can do both, but not everyone, So it's when I saw that kind of laid out in front of me, and I thought about World of Sport as being like the absolute closest thing wrestling has ever done to the Harlem Globetrotters, I was like, well, if that's my, being a part of that legacy, being a British style wrestler, what does an update of this look like? In the same way that the update of the Harlem Globetrotters to my childhood was And One. And so basically that's just kind of where it all came from. And then hearing them talk about it put the thoughts in my head to really understand what my brand was, because that's what I was being seen as. So that's kind of where it all, got developed. And then it was just kind of like, what is my spin on all of these British techniques that I've been trained so specifically on?
Okay, two follow-ups on that. One, can we bury Mose? We've got heat with him on this show. We can't stand him. We'll never have him on the show again. Two, favorite and one players.
So first of all, I can't bury Mose, man. That's my God.
Mose has been on this show more than anybody else
anyone.
in the history.
Yeah.
So we love. He was literally on like 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
we love Mose. Yeah. He always has a spot here. So for anybody out there, or for you, if you think we actually do have heat with him, no, we absolutely love Mose.
No, he's the best. Favorite and one players. I remember specifically having a burnt DVD that I got from a Chicago flea market that had hot sauce, white chocolate, and Escalade were the three guys on that. And so when I first started putting this together, hot sauce was the one who I looked at the most to kind of get like, oh, what is it that he's doing that's like making the crowd feel this way and making his opponent feel that way? And what's like the closest thing in wrestling I can do? So it's like I have my thing where it's like I take their ankle, I dribble their ankle between my legs, and then I shoot it off, right? I was just thinking about that because I was thinking about like hot sauce, like putting the ball in his shirt and pretending to pass, and they're just looking at the ball in his shirt and he shoots on him. And just that moment of like, what is he doing to me? And then just the embarrassment of like, how could you do this to me? And I just wanted to find, the wrestling equivalent of that. And it's been a lot of fun to just kind of play and find new things and bring new things to wrestling and just expand the culture of what it is.
And there were definitely a couple summers in a row where I spent those summers staying up late watching the AN1 mixtape tour and trying all these moves that you're talking about. Like I would put the ball in my shirt and try to like spin it around my body. I try to do like the off the heezy and like have like someone stand in front of me and try to like bounce the ball off their forehead and stuff. Try to go through their legs and all that stuff. Like and I'm like, I couldn't do any of that stuff. But like in your head, like you thought, man, like these guys. But yeah, that's so funny that you're bringing back a lot of memories of this stuff for me. The N1 mixtape tour was a very big deal for like a short amount of time, but like if you were around to like know about it, the people who know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What how did you actually get like linked up with TWE? Because obviously Jaden Newman is like the guy there, and him himself we've talked about pretty often on this show. The fact that he was like this teenager who's like parent or grandfather like gave him like a wrestling company, and like there was like this whole stigma about him and all the in like the company and the building and all this stuff for like the longest time. But now it's like super well established. Jaden's like one of the most prestigious trainers in the area. Like all these companies, not just TWE, like ICW NHB run shows out of there, Action run shows out of there. So like, how do you actually get linked up with TWE, and what are your experiences like working like for Jaden Newman?
So it's kind of a mix of things that got me there. Firstly, me and Jaden really, really bonded at a Chris Hero seminar in Charlotte, right near the end of like the super strict kind of pandemic regulations. Like we were still like, in mass separated, just talking, like no wrestling and all that. But the fact that we had both took that drive just to be able to like talk about wrestling for a night and learn and get better, just really kind of bonded us in a way, and having similar tastes for things and just being really cool. Jaden's like such a sweetheart and just a really, really lovely, selfless dude. And I really appreciate him. And I'm so thankful for not only his friendship, but his leadership as far as TWE goes. So that was like my in with Jaden initially was we just kind of liked each other off of that. But at the same time, Jay Rose, who I work for a lot at Naptown All Pro, is basically like a student of Dylan Hales. And so he was trying to put me on with Dylan for ages. And, there wasn't really, it didn't make sense yet. And so that had like taken a while, and it had all kind of lined up because Shaza McKenzie was doing a tour of the States, and her and I were originally going to tag later that month. And she was based in Atlanta, where I live currently. And I was like, oh, I can, take you to this action show. Like I live in town. And based off of that, like, as kind of like, oh, thank you for, driving Shaza up action. Also had to talk with TWE and was like, hey, do you have a spot for Darian maybe? And there ended up being an opening on the card with Jaden. And so I wrestled Jaden in my debut there. which is crazy because obviously it's his building, his house and everything, but it was nothing but love and just a really awesome experience. And yeah, I've had a really great time being there.
You mentioned Jay Rose being a student of Dylan Hales. Like, so I currently live in Atlanta as well, but I lived in Nashville for like a decade before I moved here around the time of the pandemic. So I went to all the sup shows in Nashville, the Basement East, and there's so much history within that building and the people that would go there, not just the wrestlers, but like I remember Jay Rose as a fan that would go to those shows and like eventually got like really heavily involved in the scene. Mose was just a fan, got heavily involved in the scene. I was just a fan, wound up doing the stuff I'm doing here and stuff. So it's like I love seeing the kind of what that little building in Nashville has like spawned. And I know that you got a chance to get in there and like the tail end, you were part of the Incarnation Gauntlet match at SUP. So any thoughts on like your experience wrestling out of like the Basement East or just like wrestling in Nashville in general?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, actually, I apologize. That sub show you did, I think, was actually at the East Side Bowl. I think I don't know if that was at the Basement East because it was during COVID.
Yeah, that was East Side Bowl.
Okay, yeah,
and it was the last like one as of so far. Like I don't know if stuff is like 100% done or anything, but that was the last one.
What we're hearing is, so we've had Kevin Koo on, and he was telling us that it was mainly had to do with like them locking down venues because Live Nation owns so many of them now. But then also Mo just the other week said there might be something cooking for a return. Alec Price is still technically the Bone Storm champion. Like I think he's got the destroyed belt somewhere at home. So but yeah, I guess it's just your thoughts of like Nashville wrestling there and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was really cool. I feel like my wrestling journey has been so cool and unique and specific, like starting in England and like moving here and everything. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I was like 9 months to a year too late to the game. Just in the sense of like so many of my peers now were the people who were the ones on stuff when it was really, really like on and popping. And it's like, oh man, like what it would have been like to have been there and been able to mix it up with all. Because a lot of my stuff haven't even wrestled, right? But to be there with all of them, Brett Eisen is someone who I've gotten to wrestle multiple times since. And it's just like, I don't think I realized at the time how crazy it was that I was working there and doing that. And I was in a pile driver match against Shabby, who I can't stand. I hate that dude so much. Oh my God. And so I felt like that kind of started a long line of me not liking Shug. was being at stuff. And, has led us to where we are now.
Yes. Yeah, speaking of Shug, I mean, your most recent title defenses have been, I mean, the first one being a draw that led into the next night, which was the Iron Man match, the 30-minute Iron Man match. What was that experience like? I thought that was a really damn good match. And I mean, that was another one where it was like you had to keep just finding weight because if I remember correctly, I'm doing this all off the dome. I got Cage Match in front of me for some reminders, but as far as the actual match went, if I remember correctly, you were down 0-2 and then wound up coming back and winning, I think 3-2, but it was like jarring because we're so not used to seeing you lose in that building at all. It was like, wait, he's down 0-2. And I thought that really added to the story of your comeback and you ultimately winning that match.
Yeah, it was very crazy. I mean, Shug is a world champion, a bona fide world champion. And is, no slouch, is a veteran, is wily, is very wise. And, I got caught slipping twice in a row. And like you said, that is so crazy because when I look back on like the past year, almost 2 years at TWE now, only 2 people have ever pinned me in that building. And that's Jaden and Adam Priest. And, even though they've pinned me, I've, gotten my wins back or whatever. And with Shogi, it was like, oh, you did it twice in a row. And like, I had to eat that after not being able to get the job done the first night. And 30 minutes Iron Man after, we had already fought for like 20 minutes straight the night before was so crazy. But what's special about TWE and my place there is that the crowd is so giving and so energetic. And for them to be up for 30 straight minutes made the job a lot easier.
To bounce around a little bit, you've made multiple appearances on like AEW and ROH, so clearly doing something right to continue to get the call back. And one thing that stands out to me is most of the time everybody comes in there and they're in there to lose, to enhance the other talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
You actually have a no contest in AEW. The FTR match is technically a no contest. So I don't know if that means anything big picture. It's like, you know what? This is going to be not a loss for you. This is going to be a no contest. But really, what's been the general, I guess, feeling and the when you go to AEW ROH tapings, specifically the last one at the esports arena, which I know they were there for a good month. Like, what's been the feedback and the response from AEW and ROH?
I mean, it's been nothing but love. Yeah, I think the no contest was their first ever no contest in like company history, because I remember like people were blowing up. Yeah, people were blowing up my Twitter about it. But yeah, crazy. But no, I every time I go there, it's nothing but love. It's really cool to be considered kind of like a go-to person for them to hit up and consider. And I have so many friends there. I have so many of my like training partners there, that it just feels very natural. And also just being able to, because I know so many of them, look at what is special about them and how I can be special in a different way. Because I feel like I found a good way of like maximizing my time there. Because it's not that my matches are that much longer than anyone else's. It's just, I feel like I'm putting the right pieces in the right place is all.
What was your most recent experience, like feedback doing Ring of Honor against Robbie Eagles? Because I saw a lot of people like talking about you on social media, like after that, and they were like, a lot of people probably saw you for the first time during that as well. So like, what was your experience with that and the feedback coming out of that?
Oh, it was great. I mean, Robbie's one of the best in the world, and to have that experience just by not luck of the draw. Like obviously, I worked to get there and everything, but it was a huge opportunity thrown in my lap. And one of the things that's very hard about wrestling and starting in a wrestling career is having access to people who are better than you, right? It's very, very hard to wrestle people that have, done more, been more experienced, traveled and really have that. And so it was such an honor and a learning experience for me. And the biggest thing is that like people thought that it was like a pure rules match just because we did so much, kind of technical wrestling limb work. And whenever people talk about me being a technical wrestler that's fun, or how I make it look fun to do pure wrestling, is really cool. Just because I feel like that's always used as such a slight on the genre. And for me to be able to kind of like rid it of that, I just think it's really cool. And it's something I'm getting to like really explore and spread my arms on and feel no walls. So it's been really, really cool.
Awesome. Something else that must be really cool is number 251. Congratulations. TWI 500. Yeah, absolutely. And he says here on your Twitter post, it says November 30th will be 5 years in the game. So congratulations on an early anniversary there with that as well. But in reality, you're really only like 3 or so years, because I mean, you missed so much of that chunk in the pandemic. So I mean, that's really a credit. Like, congratulations, man. That's a real credit to really only be like legit like 3 or so years into your career. And number 251 on that list is how's that feel, man?
Thank you. It's unreal. It's very unreal. I don't know. I'm not talking about other people's numbers in a weird way, just, but like for me, I remember specifically the moment where I was like, I'm going to try this. And I remember it was because of Kofi Mania, where I really sat down and I was like, no, I want to try this. Like I was really inspired, and to be like on the same page as Kofi Kingston is like the craziest thing in the world. And just very like humbling and, fulfilling. It's just very it's such a cool dose of self-affirmation, and I'm very thankful because like I said, the fast track that I've been on has just been a lot of luck and the right people in the right rooms and the right connections and the right people caring about me. And so it feels really, really, really sick. 251, I'm one away from being right there in the half. Can't be super upset. Kushida is directly above me. So it's very cool, and I'm very stoked. I'm very, very happy with it.
I would imagine Cody Rhodes says like everyone cares about these numbers. If they say they don't care about them, they're lying. And there's obviously a lot of debate and discourse online about what the numbers mean and who should be ranked where. But I feel like for really any wrestler, certainly independent wrestlers, when you see these numbers, it's like, okay, this is where I want to get to. Or you mentioned in your post, oh, I was here last year, now I'm here. Like you can see the growth and you can see more people are paying attention to. So I just kind of want to get your overall thoughts on sort of the PWI 500 and lists like that and what they sort of mean to someone like you and some of your peers.
And did your rate go up?
Of course it did. Right below Kushida. Are you for real? I'm on the same page as Kofi Kingston. Are we for real?
Yes, right.
The lists are hard because, you know, and PWI I think does do a very good job of explaining every year. Like there is very specific criteria that it's around. Like it's not as cut and dry as just like, here are the best, most talented people in the world in order. I feel like they're very clear and they try to be even clearer every year about it, and still people feel some type of way. To be on the list at all is very cool. To not be on the list doesn't mean anything. One of the most, Daniel Makabe wasn't on the list this year, and he's Daniel Makabe. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's not the end all be all, but it is very cool. And like we were talking about, like with commentary, to see what the world sees of you is a very useful tool as a wrestler. And so I think it's very cool. I'm very thankful for things like the Black Wrestler 500, for QW. You know, like they're so helpful. I think more than people realize. And again, they're not end all be all, but it is such there are no degrees or diplomas in wrestling. So there are very few things that you can use to like legitimize your quality. And although it is just kind of like an aloof, ethereal thing, it is still something, you know? So yeah, I think there's a very cool value to the list. And yeah, but it's also not you know, the most serious thing in the world.
I think what adds to the prestige is kind of what you were saying, is like they do have a very defined criteria. This is not like one person sitting down, okay, this wrestler is better than this wrestler, or this match is this many stars or anything like that. Like it's a group of people coming together. Here's their criteria. This is how we're going to put it together. And look, people get left off. There are oversights that happen. I completely understand that. So someone like Roman Reigns doesn't qualify because he didn't wrestle enough. And, you know, Roman Reigns is the biggest star maybe in the entire wrestling industry. So he should probably be somewhere on this list. But I think because it is so defined, it does add to the credibility of the overall list, at least in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know about like dream matches you have. I know it's a pretty generic question, but like, do you have any like kind of some matches that you want in kind of the immediate future? Some things that you think are like pretty feasible or could be like on the horizon soon with some people you're really interested in working with? And then also maybe like down the line, like some like maybe your favorite wrestlers, like big dream matches you would maybe want to have like a larger company like down the road if you can pick a couple.
Yeah. I think it'll be easier for me to do long-term ones, I think, first. I just, like, at some point realized recently, like, so for people who don't know, I guess me and Makabe have a very close relationship. I 100% consider him my, like, wrestling mentor. And when we wrestled, it was, like, for his inheritance, right? And so getting to, like, continue to build upon his legacy is really big for me. So I think if I'm going to like continue on his legacy, I feel like I have to wrestle Timothy Thatcher at some point. That just feels like it has to happen. There was a chance that we could have crossed paths in the SCI last year. We were both in the tournament, but we didn't. And it just feels like, you know, taking on the sensei type thing. It feels like something I have to do in my journey. And that's, only like a really recent realization, but that's a big one for me, would be him. In the immediate future, Callum Newman from New Japan was like my first ever singles match, and to see where we both are now is very cool. And so I would love to wrestle him. I would love to wrestle Isaiah Broner one-on-one. Lee Moriarty has a really cool belt. But yeah, there's so much going on in the world of wrestling. And I feel like I'm in a very interesting place where it's like there is no limit up or down to where I can kind of have matches with or who with. I'm in that sweet spot where it's like it could be someone you see on TV every week, or it could be someone you've never heard of before, and it could be equally exciting. Me and Paul Walter Hauser have to do something at some point. That's like my boy. We're very, very close. I don't know if that's tagging or if I have to beat him up, but like we're gonna make it happen soon.
Everyone's got to respect the dedication he's put into like what he's doing in the ring and stuff too. Like he's one of those guys that I honestly, there's no disrespect, I didn't know of him like outside, like before he got into wrestling. I found out, like I did find out once I saw who he was and the reaction he was getting and the response to him being involved in stuff. But I immediately recognized that guy had a deep respect for pro wrestling. Like he wasn't doing it to like for any kind of clout, or like he clearly loved, because he was doing like death matches and stuff. So like, I mean, you wouldn't do that unless you actually wanted to be involved. He did like a fight against Filthy Tom in like an MMA cage, like not that long ago. I mean, you don't do that unless you like for the love of the game, you know?
No, and to really stress this, and this is something that I don't think people understand. Wrestling's dangerous. Wrestling's dangerous and it hurts. People die and get paralyzed in that ring, for real, all the time. People get seriously, grievously, never be the same again, injured in that ring all the time, and people don't understand this. This man is like one of the most successful, influential actors on the planet, does not need to be a wrestler if he does not want to be. And he is like really putting himself at risk and does not have to, for the love of the game, you know? And like kind of, you know, behind the scenes, whatever, he was taking some of his very first bumps in a ring with me, us training together. And like, I remember him taking a really, you know, bad fall and like really having to consider, like, is this something I really want to go forward with? Something that a lot of wrestlers do. You know, the first time I broke bones in the ring, the first time I had my teeth messed up in a ring, like I had to really think like, do I want to do this the rest of my life? And for him to put himself out there like that is very, very cool. And yeah, he really loves it, and I respect that.
How are you training with him? Because I would imagine, you just mentioned he is like one of the top actors. He just won like an Emmy for stuff he's been in. He's in freaking Cobra Kai. I love Cobra Kai. Like he's everywhere. And so you're training him. And it's like, I gotta like give him proper training, but also maybe be a little careful. Like, what is your mindset when you're in there with him?
Yeah, I mean, it helps that like I'm an actor myself. So the reason I was living in England is because I got my master's degree in Shakespeare and everything. And so we already like kind of bonded on several levels. And he was living with DDP for a while. And Dallas is like a wrestling dad of mine. So that's like how we made the connection. But I think it was like a matter of me knowing what it's like, obviously not to the same degree, but me knowing what it's like to, even though I'm an actor and I got to keep my face pretty and all that, like, no, like being 10 toes about this. And when I realized he was locked in the same way that I was, you know, maybe even despite some other people's best wishes, like it was like, you know, we're going to do it. And so I would be careful in like putting the training wheels on, but like, it's, you know, time to go, it's time to go. And he wouldn't want it any other way, which again is, you know, speaks huge to him.
What's it like having DDP as like a wrestling dad? Because DDP is awesome.
He is. He be on my ass, man.
DDP walk.
I will get called. Yo, I've been called at like 11:30 at night. Kid, I know you're not doing the program. I see it. And I'm like, oh no. I've been eating. Tell me, what have you been eating? And I'm like, you know, he has eyes everywhere. He is he's the best, and it's because he loves and he cares. And I'm so thankful for Dallas. You know, a lot of people, even though it's like to me really obvious, the People's Prince thing 100% came from Dallas. He was the People's Champion, and he gave me my advice early on in my career for the kind of wrestler that I should be. And he always talked about the value of being a People's Champion. And obviously I can be that because, as we know, there are, you know, 2 of them in wrestling. And so I'm the People's Prince because my OG was the People's Champion.
See, I actually did not know that connection. I knew you, of course, as the People's Prince, and I grew up on on Diamond Dallas Page. I was a WCW kid. I'm in my mid 30s, so I like DDP was like, I mean, I way up there on my list of favorite all time guys. So like, but I always considered him the People's Champion. I was always like, The Rock's the fraud People's Champion, and I think that WWE made a giant mistake when they didn't do DDP versus The Rock. When DDP came in, they did that stupid stalker angle with The Undertaker and DDP. But DDP should have done People's Champ versus People's Champ against The Rock, and I'll stand by that till the end of time. So
I feel it. I feel that. We're standing on business for Dallas, man.
Yeah, 100. Like you said, TTD. We're 10 toes down right now on DDP. TTD on DDP. All right.
Yeah.
That's gonna be his new motto. He's gonna use that motto at some point. DDP, the most positive and inspirational man in all of wrestling. I love hearing DDP stories. Darren, before we kind of wrap up here, you mentioned Kofi Mania, like really pushing you forward, like, okay, I'm gonna go and do this. Like, what kind of wrestling did you grow up on?
So I'm from Waterloo, Iowa, which is like a huge wrestling town historically, both for pro and amateur wrestling. But my parents were like, yo, this Attitude Era stuff, that is not for kids, bro. And so I wasn't allowed to watch it, which meant I had to find loopholes, right? My loopholes were I'm just watching the Sci-Fi Channel, Mom. What comes on, on Tuesday at a certain time is between me and Sci-Fi. So I was sneak watching WWE, ECW, and I was sneak watching TNA. And in TNA, I was really into the machine guns. And I remember watching the debuts of Kofi Kingston and of Evan Bourne. And I like distinct childhood memories was watching their debuts. And it's just, and I wasn't like consistently into wrestling between then and becoming one at all. Wrestling very much fell in my lap. But now to have a pretty good relationship with, Matt and Mike Seidel. And then, like I said, to be on this page with like Kofi is really cool. I think in my dissertation, when I got my master's degree, I thanked the New Day in my dissertation, and that was right before I decided to start training. And I just, super distinct memory for me, and it's just very cool, very cool.
That's awesome. You've wrestled. I think I saw when I was browsing your cage match. You've wrestled Matt Seidel, right? At AEW. That's got to be pretty surreal. One of the guys that you like watched come in and was one of your favorites. That's awesome.
Yeah, I remember like right before I didn't have a head anymore because he gave me the lightning spiral. I was thinking, wow, man. I was like, yeah, this is very full circle. He's beating my ass right now. As a kid, you don't think about like, man, I can't wait for one day for him to kick my ass. Crazy. It's just not, I remember like when I wrestled Powerhouse Hobbs, I remember just being in pain and looking up in the sky in Daly's place. And I remember I thought I heard God's voice be like, Darian, are you okay? It was Paul White. And I remember being like, wow, I didn't think when I finally met Paul White, it was going to be him asking me if I was dead or not,
Well,
so it's just, yeah.
Well, also, we didn't even mention, but like you wrestled Powerhouse Hobbs I'm looking here on it looks like it was the beginning of June. But then, like a few months later, it's like the same thing against Wardlow, where you're like in the same spot. But that's got to be there. Has to be a level though of like, I don't know how to put this into words because like Wardlow, for instance, I don't know exactly where the timeline of this matches up. This looks like it was September of 2021, but obviously at some time around then, like Wardlow's on a crash course of like massively being pushed. He's going to eventually, he's going over MJF clean, and all this. And like, so what's it like being in the spot? Because it's like your job in that moment is essentially make Wardlow look as good as humanly possible. But like, you don't have that much experience yourself. But like, if you mess up or Wardlow doesn't look overpower or whatever, like it's going to fall on you because like Wardlow's not going to get any heat for that. Like you're the guy who's out there supposed to make him look good in this scenario. So what's kind of your mindset going into something like that where you're like, yeah, this guy's getting a massive push. I got to make him look good. But like, I feel like I can do that. But like, I feel like there's a lot of pressure involved in that too, even though it's like only like a 2-minute match. It's all about highlighting him.
Yeah. If I'm being real with you, I wish I could say I was like cool enough to have like thought of all of that, but in reality, I was like, yo, he's power bombing dudes like 20 times in a row. He's jacked like crazy, and I don't want to die, man. So like, as much as I wish I could have been like, yeah, you know, I was just really thinking about the craftsmanship, or what I was like, yo, I really hope I don't get power bombed, and you know, I did more than once. It was like Hobbs, when I wrestled Hobbs, that was in the middle of the 10 body slams deal, and I was like, yo, I hope these giant men don't kill me, dog. I'm just a boy. That's really what was going through my head. And I was like, oh, you know, maybe, yeah, it was, this was crazy on fire, Wardlow. And I remember it being very crazy. I was in the spot, and everyone, including him, being like, oh, whose cousin are you? Like, why are you here? And I just, like I said, a lot of lucky right place, right time stuff.
That's awesome. That's probably the right mindset to have, by the way. Like, not really overthinking it too much. Just like, I want to stay safe out there, hope I don't get killed. But like, at the end of the day, like, you know, YOLO. Yeah.
I was like, oh man. Oh, and he gave me the power bomb pizza pie F10.
Does he call that as it's happening? Like, do you know he's going to be spinning you around and stuff, or does it just start happening? you just make sure you land safe.
There is not a thing that he did to me that I could have changed if I wanted. That man was gonna. Have you seen him? That man was gonna have his way with me. The way, you know, he's very strong, and I'm 5'9". So, yeah, it was. But yeah, it was, and both of those guys since, because they baited me out crazy, have been so nice. They have been so nice. Every time I see them, it's love, you know. But because I remember, I still have the, you know, them, Lance Archer. Every time I see him, it's a good hug where I just get real scared for like a third of a second, you know.
It's the flashbacks hit you.
Yeah. It's oh man.
Real quickly before we ask our final question that we ask every guest, I have to ask this since you mentioned New Day and thanking them in your dissertation. Can you be twins if you were born a day apart on separate days? Can you be twins?
Yes. Yes. I'm 100% on Big E's side about it. I don't know how people are still talking about it. And I remember like bringing it up to someone recently and being like, yeah, and only one person was like, you know, of course you're twin. And they're like, well, yeah, like, of course, like everyone else was right. And I was like, there's no way. I felt like how he did. I was like, there's no way that they really think like this. Yeah.
That's one of the greatest clips of all time. Just be, are y'all dumb? Y'all can't be this dumb.
The amount of times I have to say that to my friends. There's no way. There's no way. You must be joking. There's no way you really think this. Yeah, I'm a huge New Day guy. Big E's a Hawkeye. I'm from Iowa. I live in Atlanta. I'm sure I live like 10 minutes away from Woods. I don't even know, but I'm sure I live like 10 minutes away from him. But yeah, those are my guys, man. The only WWE show I've ever seen live was when Big E dropped the title to Brock. Broke my heart, man. Broke my heart.
Oh, that's an unfortunate one.
Broke my heart. But yeah, those are my guys. Love them.
Darren, the question we ask everybody, what is the coolest thing you have in your room?
The coolest thing that I have in my room is okay. And I'm sure this has been sentimentally or like.
Oh, it's completely up to you.
Yeah, and if you can show us, like, feel free if it's something you can show on the camera. But if not, you can tell us. Oh,
I'm not in my room right now, but the coolest thing that I own, which a lot of people used to know me for, is I always wear a bullet necklace, and the bullet on the necklace is actually a shell casing from my great grandfather's 21 gun salute. Super cool. He and I were super close. I was like a grown man when he passed away. Not a lot of people get to have that much time with their great grandparents. But he's super just cool and meant a lot to me. And that's like my most prized possession. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Let everybody know where they can find you at, upcoming shows, anything you want to plug.
Absolutely. You can find me at Lord Bengston on Twitter or Darian Banks. Or sorry, Lord Bengston on Instagram or Darian Bengston on Twitter. You can find me this Friday at Action Wrestling, putting Marcus Mathers in the Doit. You can find me on Saturday putting Finesse in the Doit at TWE. I am Darian Bengston. Catch Flow is my deal. I am the TWE champion, undisputed for over a year. I'm a proud member of Grab House, a proud member of Nowtown All Pro. And thank y'all so much for having me. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Guys, all the links are below to follow Darian, to keep up with Darian. Again, thank you very much for joining us. Good luck with everything moving forward. We'll definitely stay in touch. And guys, we'll be right back here on the Spotlight. We're back. Big thank you to Darren Benston for joining us in the Creators Spotlight. It was a lot of fun. Looking forward to continuing to follow his future as he moves forward. Guys, we appreciate everybody hanging out with us this morning. We'll be back next week on Fightful Overbooked. Again, if you've not subscribed to Fightful Overbooked, go do that. I do a show every single day during the weekday on Fightful Overbooked. We have new content every single day up there, especially starting next week when the Spotlight moves to Fightful Overbooked. So appreciate everybody for hanging out with us this morning. Leave a thumbs up on the video. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for just all the comments in the chat. We'll be back next week. Everybody enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the wrestling. We'll talk to y'all next week. Bye, everybody.